The rain hammered the diner windows like fists demanding entry. Inside, Kara Vaughn's phone buzzed with the message that would destroy her world. Court hearing tomorrow, noon. Prove stable housing and family structure or surrender custody of Sophie permanently. Derek's legal team. Her hand shook so violently the phone clattered onto the counter. She had 12 hours. No home, no husband, no chance. Just a rusted Honda in the parking lot where her 6-year-old daughter currently slept under a donated blanket. Across the diner, a quiet man with calloused hands and watchful eyes heard her whispered prayer. I need a miracle by morning. Before we dive into Kara's impossible night, I want to invite you on this journey with me. If this story moves you, please hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel and connecting with all of you. Now, let's see if miracles still happen in roadside diners. The Bluebird Diner had seen better decades. Its neon sign flickered erratically in the downpour, the B completely dark, leaving only Bluebird glowing against the November storm. Inside, the smell of burnt coffee and frying bacon mixed with the metallic scent of rain blown through the door every time it opened. The linoleum floor, once a cheerful checkerboard pattern, had faded to uneven shades of gray. But it was warm, and for Kara Vaughn, warmth was a luxury she could barely afford. She stood behind the counter in her stained uniform, the fabric thin from too many washes, her name tag crooked. Her blonde hair, pulled into a ponytail that hadn't been properly brushed in days, showed dark roots she couldn't afford to fix. At 28, she looked older, the kind of exhaustion that settles into bone, that shows in the shadows beneath green eyes that once sparkled with ambition. The dinner rush had thinned to a handful of regulars. Old Pete nursed his third cup of decaf in the corner booth. A trucker whose name she'd never learned shoveled pie into his mouth while scrolling through his phone. And in booth 7, near the back, sat a man she'd seen a few times before, always quiet, always alone, always watching his young daughter color with an intensity that suggested he was memorizing every crayon stroke. Kara's phone sat on the counter beside the register, face up. She'd been staring at it for the past hour, willing it not to ring, knowing it would. When it finally buzzed, the vibration seemed loud enough to rattle the water glasses. She grabbed it too quickly, nearly dropping it. The caller ID made her stomach clench. Derek Lane, her ex-husband. The man who'd promised forever and delivered 18 months before deciding that fatherhood cramped his style and a waitress wife didn't fit his corporate image. Hello? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Kara. Derek's voice was smooth, rehearsed, the tone he used in boardrooms. I'm calling as a courtesy. My lawyer wanted to just serve you the papers, but I insisted on giving you a heads up. Papers? Her free hand gripped the counter edge. Court hearing, tomorrow at noon. We're seeking full custody of Sophie. He paused, and she could hear the satisfaction in his silence. Given your current circumstances, we don't anticipate much opposition. The diner tilted. Kara's vision blurred at the edges. You can't. I'm her mother. The judge gave me primary custody. You didn't even want visitation for the first 6 months. That was before I understood how far you'd fallen. His voice turned cold. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Living in your car, Kara? Taking our daughter to truck stop bathrooms to wash up? Feeding her vending machine dinners? Tears burned her eyes. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm trying. Trying isn't good enough. Sophie deserves stability. A real home. A family structure that doesn't include sleeping in a back seat. And what does she have with you? A father who sends birthday cards 2 weeks late and cancels visits because of golf tournaments? I've made changes. His tone shifted to something practiced, something he'd prepared for court. I'm engaged to Melissa. We've bought a house in Laurel Heights, 5 bedrooms, excellent school district. I have a stable career, health insurance, a savings account. What do you have, Kara? Really? Her mouth opened, but no sound came. The hearing is tomorrow at noon, downtown courthouse, Judge Patricia Morrison presiding. My lawyer will argue that you're unable to provide a safe, stable environment. Unless you can prove otherwise, and I mean prove it with documentation, witnesses, and evidence of permanent housing, the ruling will be swift. He paused again, letting it sink in. You should use this time to prepare Sophie for the transition. Make it easier on her. Derek, please. See you in court. The line went dead. Kara stood frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear, listening to silence. Around her, the diner continued its late-night rhythm, Pete's spoon clinking against his mug, the trucker's fork scraping his plate, the hum of the ancient refrigerator behind the counter. Normal sounds in a world that had just shattered. You okay, honey? Rita, the night manager, touched her shoulder. The older woman's face, weathered by 60 years of hard living and cigarette smoke, showed genuine concern. Kara couldn't speak. She shook her head, tears finally spilling over. Take your break. Go sit down before you fall down. Kara's legs moved automatically, carrying her to the empty booth near the restrooms. She collapsed onto the cracked vinyl seat and buried her face in her hands. The phone clattered onto the table. Tomorrow at noon. 12 hours. How could she prove she had a stable home when she didn't have a home at all? The apartment she'd lost 3 months ago when the diner cut her hours and she couldn't make rent. The second job that barely covered gas and Sophie's daycare. The car that was literally falling apart, held together by duct tape and desperation. A sob escaped her throat, then another. She pressed her palm against her mouth, trying to stay quiet, trying not to fall apart completely in the middle of the diner. But the dam had cracked and everything poured through. Months of holding it together, of smiling for Sophie while her world crumbled, of pretending that sleeping in a car was an adventure, of telling her daughter that things would get better soon, so soon, just hold on. I need a miracle, she whispered into her hands. Please, I need a miracle by morning. She didn't notice the man approaching until he was standing beside her booth. Excuse me, Kara looked up, wiping frantically at her tears. It was the man from booth 7, the one with the daughter. Up close, she could see he was probably in his early 30s, with dark hair that needed cutting and brown eyes that looked tired but kind. He wore a faded flannel shirt over a gray t-shirt, work boots that had seen serious use, and jeans with honest dirt on the knees. His hands, clasped in front of him, were calloused and scarred. Working hands. I'm sorry, Kara managed. I didn't mean to. I'm fine, really. No, you're not. He said it gently, without judgment. And I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but in a diner this quiet, voices carry. Kara's face flushed. How much did you? Enough. He glanced back at his booth, where his daughter was still absorbed in her coloring book, headphones over her ears. You've got 12 hours to prove you have a stable home and family structure, or you lose your daughter in court. The bluntness of it, hearing her nightmare summarized so plainly, made Kara's chest tighten. She nodded, unable to speak. The man was quiet for a moment, studying her with an intensity that should have felt invasive but somehow didn't. Then he did something unexpected. He slid into the booth across from her. My name is Nate Dalton, he said. That's my daughter Paisley back there. She's 7. I've been raising her alone for 3 years since my wife left. He paused. I know what it's like to be desperate to keep your kids safe. Kara stared at him, confused. I don't understand why you're... I have a house, Nate interrupted. 3 bedrooms, small backyard, nothing fancy, but it's clean and it's safe. It's in a decent neighborhood with good schools. Paid off? Belonged to my grandmother before she passed. The words hung between them like an impossible offer. I still don't... You need a home and a family structure by noon tomorrow, Nate said steadily. I have a home. And I understand what it means to need help when the system is designed to crush people like us. Miss Kara's heart pounded. Are you saying... I'm saying I'll stand beside you in that courtroom tomorrow as your husband, if that's what it takes to keep your daughter with you. The proposal was so absurd, so completely insane, that Kara almost laughed. But the expression on Nate's face was dead serious. You don't even know me, she whispered. No, but I know desperation. I know what it's like to lie awake terrified that one wrong move will cost you everything. I know what it feels like to be broke and exhausted and one disaster away from losing your kid. His jaw tightened. And I know what it's like to wish someone had offered help when I needed it most. Why would you do this? What could you possibly get out of it? Nate glanced back at Paisley, still happily coloring, oblivious to the adult conversation. Honestly, help. Paisley's been asking for a mom since she could talk. I work construction, long hours, unpredictable schedule. I'm drowning in laundry and grocery shopping and parent-teacher conferences I miss because I'm on a job site. I'm doing my best, but it's not enough. He turned back to Kara. You need a home and a partner for the judge. I need help managing the chaos of solo parenting. We could help each other. Kara's mind raced. This was crazy. This was beyond crazy. This was agreeing to fraud, to lying to a judge, to building a house of cards that could collapse and bury them both. But what was the alternative? Showing up to court tomorrow alone, homeless, with nothing to offer but tears and promises? Watching Derek's lawyer systematically destroy her while she sat helpless, losing Sophie forever? I could ruin your life, Kara said quietly. If this falls apart, if someone finds out, you could face legal consequences. And if I do nothing, you definitely lose your daughter. Nate leaned forward. Look, I'm not saying this is perfect. I'm not saying it's risk-free. I'm saying it's a chance. Sometimes that's all you get, one chance to fight instead of just accepting defeat. Kara looked into his eyes, really looked. She saw exhaustion there, yes, but also determination, the kind of stubborn strength that came from weathering storms alone. She recognized it because she saw the same thing in her own mirror every morning. How would this even work? Her voice trembled. We can't just show up claiming to be married with no history, no documentation. We have tonight to build a history, to get our story straight. Nate pulled out his phone. I'll show you my house, my financials, proof that I can provide stability. You can document everything, take photos, copy my lease agreements, whatever makes you feel safe. Then we spend the night coaching each other, memorizing details, making sure our story holds up under questioning. Your daughter, Paisley, will be told that you're a friend who needs help and that we're all going to stay together for a while. Kids adapt faster than adults. If this works, she gets a playmate and I get help. If it doesn't, he shrugged. We tried. Kara's hand shook as she picked up her phone, looking at Derek's last message again. Tomorrow at noon. The clock was ticking. I need to think. You don't have time to think, Nate said, not unkindly. You have time to decide. There's a difference. He was right. Thinking meant weighing options, considering consequences, making careful plans. She was past that. This was about choosing between two impossibilities, trying this insane plan or walking into court tomorrow with nothing. If I say yes, Kara said slowly, what happens right now? Tonight? You follow me to my house in your car, never out of your sight, so you feel safe. I show you the space. We wake up Sophie, introduce the girls, and if it feels too weird or wrong, you leave. No pressure, no obligation. But if you stay, we work through the night getting ready for court. It was the detail about following in her own car that decided it. The fact that he understood she'd need an escape route. That he wasn't trying to trap her or control the situation. Just offering a lifeline and trusting her to grab it or not. Kara took a shaky breath. Okay. Nate blinked. Okay? Okay. Let's do this. The words came out stronger than she felt. But I document everything. I take photos of your ID, your address, everything. If this is some kind of document whatever you need. Nate stood. Give me 5 minutes to settle my bill and get Paisley ready. Meet us in the parking lot? Kara nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched him return to his booth, saw him crouch beside his daughter and speak quietly to her. Paisley looked up, confused, then nodded. She began gathering her crayons with the careful precision of a child who'd learned to take care of her things. Rita appeared beside Kara's booth. You sure about this, honey? You heard? Hard not to. Rita sat down heavily. Look, I don't know that man from Adam, but I've seen him in here a dozen times over the past few months. Always tips well, even when his meal's just coffee and fries. Always patient with his little girl. Never rude, never drunk, never creepy. She paused. Doesn't mean you should trust him, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't either. I don't have a choice. We always have choices. They just ain't always good ones. Rita squeezed her hand. You've got my number. You text me his address before you go inside that house. And you text me every hour to check in. If I don't hear from you, I'm calling the cops. Kara felt tears sting her eyes again, but this time from gratitude. Thank you. Go get your baby from the car. Time to see if miracles still happen. The parking lot was a maze of puddles reflecting the stuttering neon. Kara splashed through them to her Honda, parked in the darkest corner, as far from the lights as possible. Sophie was curled in the back seat, her small body wrapped in the donated blanket, her stuffed elephant clutched against her chest. Baby, Kara whispered, opening the door. Wake up, sweetie. Sophie stirred, blinking confused eyes. Mama, are we going to the morning place already? The morning place was the truck stop 2 miles away, where Kara would park at dawn so Sophie could use the bathrooms to brush her teeth and wash up before school. Not yet, but we're going somewhere new tonight, somewhere warm and safe. Sophie sat up, instantly alert with the hyper-awareness of a child who'd learned that change usually meant stress for her mother. Is it okay? Are you okay? God, what had Kara done to this baby, that she had to worry about her mother's emotional state at 6 years old? I'm okay. Better than okay. I met someone who's going to help us. Kara helped her daughter into her jacket. There's going to be another little girl there, Paisley. She's a year older than you. I need you to be brave and kind, all right? Okay, Mama. Sophie grabbed her elephant. Is this like the shelter? They'd spent 3 weeks in a women's shelter before Kara couldn't handle the rules and restrictions anymore. The curfews, the constant supervision, the judgment from staff who looked at her like she was broken. No, baby, this is different. Better. A truck pulled up beside them, an older Ford F-150, blue paint faded but clean. Nate climbed out, followed by Paisley. The little girl had dark curls pulled into pigtails and wore pink pajamas under her coat. Hi, Paisley said shyly, waving at Sophie. Sophie waved back, hiding partially behind Kara's legs. Sophie, this is Mr. Nate and his daughter Paisley. We're going to go to their house tonight. Nate crouched down to Sophie's level, a move that immediately made him less intimidating. Hey, Sophie, your mom said you like elephants. Sophie nodded, holding up her stuffed animal. Paisley has about 50 stuffed animals. Maybe she'll share some with you. I will, Paisley said eagerly. I have 3 elephants, a purple one, and a gray one, and a tiny one that's pink. The tension in Sophie's small body eased slightly. Really? Really? And we have hot chocolate. Daddy makes really good hot chocolate. With marshmallows? So many marshmallows. Nate stood, meeting Kara's eyes. Follow close. It's about 15 minutes from here. Kara nodded, securing Sophie in her car seat. The one thing she'd managed to keep through everything, the one non-negotiable safety item. Then she climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine that coughed twice before catching, and followed Nate's taillights out of the parking lot and into the rain-soaked night. She texted Rita the moment they turned onto the main road. Following Nate Dalton. Blue Ford F-150, license plate JTK 4782, heading east on Route 9. Rita's response was immediate. Got it. Check in every hour or I'm sending the cavalry. The drive took them out of the commercial sprawl and into older residential neighborhoods, the kind with mature trees and houses built in the 70s, before subdivisions became cookie-cutter identical. Nate's truck turned onto Maple Street, a quiet road with streetlights spaced far apart, then pulled into the driveway of a small ranch-style house with yellow siding and white trim. It looked normal, almost painfully normal. Not a mansion, not a dump, just a regular house where regular people lived regular lives. Kara parked on the street, documenting everything with her phone before getting out. Photos of the house number, the street sign, the license plate. She texted the address to Rita, then helped Sophie out of the car. Nate was already on the front door, key in hand. Welcome to the chaos, he said, pushing it open. The interior matched the exterior, dated but clean. The living room had mismatched furniture that looked inherited rather than purchased. A brown couch with Afghan blankets draped over worn spots, a coffee table covered in Paisley's artwork, a bookshelf stuffed with children's books and what looked like technical manuals. The walls were bare except for a few framed photos, Nate and Paisley at different ages, a wedding photo with a blonde woman Kara assumed was the ex-wife, family shots with people she didn't recognize. But it was warm, and it smelled like cinnamon, probably from a candle burning on the kitchen counter. Paisley, can you show Sophie your room while I talk to her mom? Nate asked. Yes, come on, Sophie, I'll show you the elephant collection. Paisley grabbed Sophie's hand and practically dragged her down the hallway, both girls' shyness evaporating in the way that only children could manage. Kara stood in the living room, suddenly aware of how she must look. Hair a mess, uniform stained, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling exposed. Nate closed the front door. First things first, ground rules. You're safe here. The guest room is through that hallway, second door on the left. It's got a lock on the inside. You can lock it every night, every hour, whenever you want. No one will bother you. Kara nodded, throat tight. Second, you want to see documentation? I've got it. He walked to a small desk in the corner and pulled out a file folder. House deed in my name, utility bills showing consistent payment, my driver's license, bank statements from the last 6 months. I'm not rich, but I'm not drowning either. Background check I had to get for Paisley's school volunteer program. Tax returns. Whatever you need to feel comfortable. He handed her the folder. Kara took it with shaking hands, sitting on the couch to flip through. Everything looked legitimate. The house had been paid off 2 years ago, inherited from Eleanor Dalton, presumably his grandmother. The bank statement showed modest but steady income, consistent bills being paid, a small savings account. The background check came back clean. Why? The word came out before Kara could stop it. Why are you really doing this? Nate sat in the armchair across from her, elbows on his knees. You want the honest answer? Yes. 3 years ago, my wife left. Just packed a bag one morning while Paisley was at preschool and said she couldn't do it anymore. The kid, the small-town life, being married to a guy who works with his hands instead of a keyboard. She moved to Seattle, sends a birthday card every year, contributes exactly 0 to Paisley's life. He paused. I spent the first year drowning, working overtime to pay the bills, Paisley in daycare 10 hours a day, coming home to a disaster of a house, and a kid who cried for her mom every night. I begged for help, from family who said I needed to man up, from friends who slowly stopped calling, from social services who treated me like I was incompetent for struggling. Kara listened, recognizing the pain in his voice. Then one night, Paisley got sick, high fever, throwing up, and I had a job the next morning I couldn't miss or we'd lose the house payment. I called everyone, my mom, my sister, neighbors, anyone. No one could help. I almost took her to the ER just so I'd have somewhere safe to leave her. He met Kara's eyes. A stranger in the waiting room saw me losing it and offered to sit with Paisley while I worked. Just sat there for 6 hours, reading to my kid, making sure she stayed hydrated, asking for nothing in return. And that person saved you, Kara said softly. That person showed me that sometimes desperate people aren't looking for pity or judgment. They're looking for a hand up, a chance to survive. Nate leaned back. So when I heard you tonight, whispering that you needed a miracle, I heard myself 3 years ago, and I figured maybe it's my turn to be someone stranger. Laughter echoed from down the hallway. Sophie's genuine, delighted laughter, a sound Kara hadn't heard in weeks. The girls seemed to be hitting it off, Nate observed. Kara stood, walking to the hallway to peek in. Through the open door of Paisley's room, she could see both girls on the floor, surrounded by stuffed animals arranged in some kind of elaborate tea party. Sophie was smiling, animated, showing Paisley how her elephant could sit properly in a tiny chair. She hasn't smiled like that in so long, Kara whispered. Then maybe that's reason enough. Kara turned back to Nate. What do we do now? Now, Nate said, standing, we build a marriage. They worked through the night at the kitchen table, fueled by coffee and adrenaline. Nate had grabbed a notebook and started with basics, the story they'd tell anyone who asked. How did we meet? He asked, pen ready. Kara thought for a moment. The diner. You were a regular customer. We started talking during slow nights. Good. How long ago? 8 months? Long enough to be serious, not so long that people wonder why they've never heard of me. Nate wrote it down. When did we start dating officially? 6 months ago. You asked me out after I served you breakfast for the 50th time. I said no at first because I had Sophie and didn't want to rush into anything. That's good. Shows you're protective of your daughter. What changed your mind? You met Sophie by accident. I was pulling a double shift and my babysitter canceled last minute. I had to bring her with me. You saw how good I was with her, how patient, and you told me that watching me be a mom made you want to be a better dad. Nate looked up, something shifting in his expression. That's actually really good. They continued building the story layer by layer. Their first date, dinner at a local Italian place, nothing fancy, where they talked for 3 hours and closed down the restaurant. Nate liked that she didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. Kara liked that he talked about Paisley with such obvious love. They'd taken it slow, introducing the girls carefully, making sure everyone was comfortable. When did we decide to get married? Kara asked. 3 weeks ago. I proposed after you lost your apartment. Nate met her eyes. I told you that you and Sophie shouldn't struggle alone when I had space, that we were already becoming a family anyway, that it made sense. That's not very romantic. It's practical, and it's honest in its way. Anyone who knows my history won't be surprised that I'd value stability over romance. And anyone who knows mine will understand why I'd say yes. Kara paused. We got married at the courthouse last week. Simple ceremony, no family, because we wanted to focus on building our life together before announcing it publicly. Do we have rings? They both looked at their bare fingers. Not yet, Nate said. We plan to get them this weekend, but haven't had the chance. If anyone asks, we'll say finances are tight. They'll believe that. Kara sipped her now cold coffee. What about the sleeping arrangements? If social services visits, they'll expect us to share a bedroom. Nate rubbed his face. We'll need to make it look like we do. I can move some of your stuff into my room, make the guest room look like Sophie's. The thought of sharing space, even fake space, with this man made Kara's stomach flip. But it was necessary. They had to sell the illusion completely. What else? Nate asked. What will they ask about? Everything. Kara's voice was grim. Derek's lawyer will try to poke holes in every part of our story, how we take our coffee, what side of the bed each person sleeps on, whether we fight and about what, pet names, inside jokes, morning routines. Okay, coffee first. How do you take yours? Black with 2 sugars? I take mine with cream, no sugar. You think I use too much cream? I think you're drinking battery acid. Kara felt herself almost smile. Bed, I sleep on the right side. I'm a light sleeper and I wake up early. I'm on the left. I snore sometimes. You've mentioned it, but not in a mean way. Do we fight? Sometimes. Normal stuff. I leave my tools around and it drives you crazy. You reorganize my kitchen and I can't find anything, but we don't yell. We talk it out. Nate wrote it down. Pet names? I don't love pet names. You've tried a few, but they didn't stick. You usually just call me Kara. Same for me. I'm Nate, not honey or babe or anything like that. They went on like this for hours, building a relationship out of thin air. Preferences, habits, quirks, conflicts, resolutions. They memorized details about each other's lives. Nate's construction company was called Dalton & Sons, though there were no sons yet. Kara's favorite color was blue. Nate couldn't cook beyond basics, but he tried. Kara loved old movies, especially the black and white ones. Paisley was obsessed with horses and wanted riding lessons they couldn't afford yet. Sophie was shy, but imaginative, always making up stories. Around 3 a.m, Nate leaned back in his chair. What's Derek going to focus on? What's his best angle? Kara's expression hardened. He'll say I'm unstable, that I can't hold a job or keep a home, that I'm irresponsible and impulsive, that Sophie deserves better than a mother who lives in crisis. And what's the truth? The truth? Kara's laugh was bitter. The truth is that I've worked my ass off since the divorce, that I took every shift I could get, that I lost the apartment because the diner cut hours, not because I was careless, that I chose to live in my car instead of some unsafe shelter where God knows what could happen to Sophie, that every single decision I've made has been about protecting my daughter, even when it cost me everything. Her voice cracked. But the truth doesn't matter if it looks like failure. Nate reached across the table, not touching her, but close. Then we reframe it. You didn't fail. You survived. You didn't give up. You adapted. You didn't put Sophie in danger. You kept her safe in impossible circumstances. And now you're here building something stable, which is exactly what a good mother does. Kara stared at him. You really believe that? I believe that Derek's lawyer is going to paint you as a villain when you're actually a hero who got dealt a shit hand. His jaw tightened. And I believe we're going to walk into that courtroom and prove that this family, our family, is real enough and strong enough that no judge will tear it apart. The conviction in his voice did something to Kara's chest, loosened the vice that had been squeezing her heart for months. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. Let's see if we can pull this off. They practiced until dawn broke, running through scenarios, quizzing each other, correcting details until their story was seamless. When the girls woke up around 7, still shy but warming to each other, Kara made breakfast while Nate helped them get dressed. It felt surreal, standing in someone else's kitchen, flipping pancakes for 4 people, watching Sophie laugh with Paisley over some cartoon on TV. It felt almost real. At 10 o'clock, Nate looked at Kara. We should get ready. Court's in 2 hours. Kara nodded, her stomach nodding. Nate had found her a clean dress to wear, something from a back closet that must have belonged to his ex-wife, navy blue and professional. It fit well enough. She showered quickly in the guest bathroom, blow-dried her hair, put on the minimal makeup she still had in her purse. When she looked in the mirror, she almost didn't recognize herself. Clean, put together, like someone who had their life managed. Like a convincing lie. Nate emerged from his bedroom wearing slacks and a button-down shirt, his hair combed, his beard trimmed. He looked solid, dependable, like the kind of man a judge would trust. Ready? He asked. Kara took a deep breath. Ready. They dropped the girls at a neighbor's house, an older woman named Mrs. Chen, who'd known Nate since he was a boy, and agreed to babysit without asking too many questions. Then they drove to the courthouse in Nate's truck, neither speaking, both lost in their own spiraling thoughts. The courthouse was an imposing brick building downtown, with marble steps and columns that seemed designed to intimidate. Inside, the hallways echoed with footsteps and quiet conversations. Lawyers in expensive suits hurried past, carrying briefcases. Families clustered on benches, waiting. And there, near the entrance to courtroom 3B, stood Derek Lane. He looked exactly as Kara remembered, tall, broad-shouldered, with perfectly styled brown hair and a suit that probably cost more than her car. Beside him stood a woman who must be Melissa, blonde, polished, wearing pearls and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And next to them both, a man in an even more expensive suit, the lawyer. Derek saw Kara and his expression shifted from bored to surprised. His eyes tracked from her to Nate, confusion flickering across his face. Kara, he said, walking over. I'm surprised you showed up. Of course I showed up. Sophie's my daughter. Derek's gaze fixed on Nate, assessing, dismissive. And you are? Nate extended his hand, his expression neutral. Nate Dalton, Kara's husband. The word hung in the air like a grenade. Derek's shock was visible, just for a second, before his corporate mask slid back into place. Husband? Really? He didn't shake Nate's hand. That's convenient timing. We got married last week, Kara said, forcing her voice to stay steady. I tried to call you to update Sophie's emergency contacts, but you didn't answer. Last week. Derek's laugh was cold. You've known this man for what, a month? And now you're married? That's exactly the kind of impulsive, reckless behavior I was telling the judge about. We've been together for 6 months, Nate said calmly. Known each other for 8. We took our time making sure it was right for both our daughters. Both? You have a kid? Derek looked between them. So my daughter is supposed to live with complete strangers? You're not helping your case, Kara. Paisley is 7, Kara said. She and Sophie get along wonderfully. They're becoming sisters. Derek's lawyer stepped forward, a thin man with cold eyes. Mr. Lane, perhaps we should save this discussion for the courtroom. He looked at Kara and Nate. I assume you have legal representation? Kara's stomach dropped. They couldn't afford a lawyer. She'd barely managed to scrape together the filing fees. We're representing ourselves, Nate said. The lawyer's smile was predatory. I see. Well, this should be straightforward then. They were called into the courtroom 15 minutes later. Judge Patricia Morrison presided, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She reviewed the case file while everyone took their seats. Derek and his legal team on one side, Kara and Nate on the other. This is a custody modification hearing, Judge Morrison began. Mr. Lane is seeking full custody of the minor child, Sophie Vaughn Lane, currently 6 years old. Ms. Vaughn, you were granted primary custody in the original divorce decree. Mr. Lane's petition argues that circumstances have changed significantly and that the child's welfare is at risk. Is that correct? Derek's lawyer stood. Yes, Your Honor, we have substantial evidence that Ms. Vaughn is currently unfit to provide adequate care. Ms. Vaughn, do you have representation? Kara stood, her legs shaking. No, Your Honor, but I do have my husband, Nate Dalton, who's here to support me. Judge Morrison's eyebrow raised slightly. The records show you were single at the time of filing. When did this marriage occur? Last week, Your Honor. We can provide the marriage certificate. Nate pulled out the document. They'd gotten it done yesterday at the courthouse, a rushed civil ceremony that cost $45 and felt both completely real and utterly fake. The judge examined it. This is legally valid. Very well. Proceed with opening statements. What followed was 2 hours of systematic destruction. Derek's lawyer presented evidence methodically. Photos of Kara's car with blankets and bags visible in the back seat. Testimony from the shelter staff about her brief stay and abrupt departure. Documentation of job losses and missed payments. A statement from Sophie's school about irregular attendance and the child arriving tired, sometimes hungry. Every piece of evidence was true. And every piece made Kara look like exactly what Derek claimed, a struggling, unstable mother who couldn't provide basic security. Your Honor, the lawyer concluded, Ms. Vaughn clearly loves her daughter. No one is disputing that. But love isn't enough. A child needs stability, routine, safety. Mr. Lane can provide an intact home with 2 parents, financial security, and excellent educational opportunities. Ms. Vaughn, despite her recent marriage, cannot demonstrate the same level of stability. Judge Morrison turned to Kara. Ms. Vaughn, would you like to respond? Kara stood, her prepared speech dissolving in her mind. Everything she'd planned to say seemed hollow now, weak against the weight of evidence. Nate touched her hand under the table, a brief, grounding contact. Your Honor, Kara began, everything Mr. Lane's lawyer said is true. I did lose my apartment. I did live in my car with Sophie for a short time. Her attendance at school wasn't perfect. I made mistakes. Her voice grew stronger. But I also kept my daughter safe, fed, and loved through impossible circumstances. I worked 2 jobs trying to stay afloat. I prioritized her safety over my pride when I swallowed my shame and stayed in a shelter. And when things got harder, I didn't give up. I adapted. Adapting by suddenly marrying a stranger? Derek's lawyer interjected. Nate isn't a stranger. We've been together for 6 months. We took our time making sure this was right for both our daughters. And yes, we married quickly once I lost the apartment, because building a family was more important than having a fancy wedding. Kara looked at the judge. I know what this looks like. I know you see desperation and poor choices. But I also know that I have fought for my daughter every single day since she was born, and I'm not going to stop fighting now. Judge Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Dalton, you've been silent throughout these proceedings. Do you have anything to add? Nate stood slowly, his construction worker's build suddenly feeling powerful in the formal courtroom. Your Honor, I don't have fancy words or legal arguments. What I have is a home, a real one, paid off, stable. And I've welcomed Kara and Sophie into it. Not because I'm a hero or a savior, but because I'm a father too, and I understand what it means to need help. He paused. My daughter Paisley hasn't had a complete family in 3 years. Now she has a friend, a potential sister, and a chance to see what a working partnership between adults looks like. Sophie has a safe place to sleep, regular meals, and a mom who's present and fighting for her. That's not instability, that's rebuilding. And if this marriage doesn't work out, the judge asked, then we handle it like adults, with the kids' welfare first. But I believe it will work, Your Honor, not because we're pretending everything is perfect, but because we're both committed to making it work for our daughters' sakes. Judge Morrison reviewed her notes. The The courtroom was silent except for the quiet hum of the air conditioning and someone's muffled cough. Finally, she looked up. This is an unusual situation. Mr. Lane presents a compelling case for stability. However, Ms. Vaughn's recent marriage does provide a changed circumstance that warrants consideration. She paused. I'm going to order a 30-day evaluation period. During this time, Sophie will remain in Miss Vaughn's custody, living in Mr. Dalton's home. A social worker will conduct unannounced visits to assess the home environment, family dynamics, and the child's well-being. Mr. Lane, you will have supervised visitation every other weekend. Derek's lawyer shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is my ruling, Judge Morrison said firmly. 30 days. If at the end of that period the social worker's report indicates instability, unsafe conditions, or any evidence that this marriage is a facade rather than a genuine family structure, custody will be immediately transferred to Mr. Lane. If the report is positive, we'll revisit permanent custody arrangements. She looked directly at Kara and Nate. I want to be very clear. If this is a performance designed to manipulate the court, you will face serious consequences. Family court does not take kindly to fraud. Understood, Your Honor, Kara whispered. The gavel fell. They made it to the truck before Kara's legs gave out. She collapsed against the passenger door, shaking, tears streaming down her face. We did it, she gasped. Oh my God, we actually did it. Nate leaned against the driver's side, his own hands trembling slightly. 30 days. We have 30 days to prove this is real. 30 days for social services to catch us in one mistake, one inconsistency, one moment that reveals we're lying. Kara looked at him. Nate, if they figure this out, they won't. You don't know that. One wrong answer, one confused look from the girls, one neighbor who mentions they've never seen me before. Kara. Nate's voice was steady. We knew this was the risk going in. We took it anyway. Now we follow through. He opened the driver's door. Let's go home and tell our daughters that we're all staying together. Home. The word felt foreign and perfect at the same time. They picked up the girls from Mrs. Chen's house. Sophie ran to Kara immediately, wrapping her arms around her mother's waist. Did we win, Mama? Kara knelt down, pulling Sophie close. Yes, baby, we won. We get to stay together. In the house with Paisley? In the house with Paisley. Sophie's smile could have lit the entire city. That night, after the girls were asleep, Sophie in her new room decorated with some of Paisley's hand-me-down posters, Paisley in her own familiar space. Kara and Nate sat on the front porch steps. The November air was cold and clean after the storm, stars visible between scattered clouds. I texted Rita that I'm okay, Kara said quietly. She wants to meet you. Make sure you're not secretly an axe murderer. Fair enough. Nate was quiet for a moment. Are you okay? Really? I don't know. I feel like I'm in shock. Like I'm going to wake up tomorrow and this will all be gone. It's not going anywhere. Not if we don't let it. Kara looked at him. This man who'd offered everything to a desperate stranger in a diner. Why do I feel like we just made a deal with the universe that we're going to spend the next 30 days paying for? Because we probably did. Nate's smile was tired, but genuine. But if it means Sophie stays safe, isn't it worth it? Kara thought of her daughter, sleeping peacefully upstairs in a real bed in a warm room. Thought of the panic that had consumed her just 24 hours ago. The certainty that she was going to lose everything. Yeah, she whispered. It's worth it. They sat together in companionable silence, two strangers who'd bound their lives together on a desperate gamble, watching the stars and wondering if miracles came with instructions, or if you just had to figure them out as you went. Inside the house, a family was forming, imperfect, unconventional, built on necessity rather than romance, but real in all the ways that mattered. 30 days to make it real enough to survive. The clock was already ticking. The first morning came too fast. Kara woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains, disoriented for 3 full seconds before reality crashed back. The guest room. Nate's house. The 30-day countdown that had already begun the moment Judge Morrison's gavel fell. She checked her phone. 6:47 a.m. No messages from social services yet, but they could show up any time. That was the point of unannounced visits, to catch families off guard, to see the truth behind whatever performance they'd prepared. Kara forced herself out of bed, pulled on jeans and a clean shirt, and padded quietly down the hallway. The house was still silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of a neighbor's dog barking. She found Nate already in the kitchen, barefoot in sweatpants and a faded t-shirt, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "You remembered," Kara said, surprised. "Black, 2 sugars." Nate slid the mug across the counter. "If we're going to convince social services we're married, I should probably know how you take your coffee." The casual intimacy of the gesture, him making her coffee, remembering her preference from their midnight cramming session, felt both comforting and deeply strange. Kara wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, grounding herself. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked. "Couple hours. You?" "Same." Kara sipped the coffee. It was strong, almost bitter, exactly how she needed it. "What time do the girls usually wake up?" "Paisley's an early riser. She'll be up by 7. Sophie?" "Depends. If she feels safe, she sleeps later. If she's anxious, she's up with the sun." Kara paused. "She slept through the night. That's the first time in weeks." Something shifted in Nate's expression. Understanding, maybe, or recognition of what that meant. "Good. That's good." They stood in the quiet kitchen, drinking coffee like an old married couple, both acutely aware that they were strangers playing house with impossibly high stakes. "We need to talk logistics," Nate said finally. "The social worker could come today, tomorrow, anytime in the next 30 days. We need this place to look lived in by all of us, not staged." "I know. I brought in some of our things from the car last night, but it's not much. A few changes of clothes for Sophie, her school supplies, some toys." Kara's throat tightened. "Everything else is either in storage I can't afford to keep, or I sold it months ago. We'll work with what we have. Your clothes go in my closet. Half the space is empty anyway since my ex took most of her stuff. Sophie's things get spread around her room. Family photos go up." He gestured to the bare walls. "This house has looked like a bachelor pad with a kid for 3 years. We need it to look like a home with 2 parents." "Do we have family photos?" "Not yet, but we will by tomorrow." Nate pulled out his phone. "I've got a friend who does photography on the side. Owes me a favor from a roofing job I did cheap. I'll call in that debt. Get us some pictures that look natural, lived in. Maybe a few candid shots of all 4 of us, something that could pass for taken over the last few months." Kara felt a flutter of panic. "That's manipulating evidence. That's creating a paper trail that matches our story. If we say we've been together 6 months but have 0 photos together, that's suspicious. If we have a handful of casual shots, nothing fancy, just phone camera quality, it supports what we're claiming." He was right, but it still felt like stepping further into dangerous territory. Every lie required 10 more lies to support it, and they were building a house of cards in hurricane season. "Okay," Kara agreed. "Photos tomorrow. What else?" "School registration. Sophie needs to be enrolled in the district school here, listed under this address. That starts Monday. I already called. They can squeeze her in for testing and placement. She'll be terrified. New school, new kids, everything unfamiliar. Paisley's in 2nd grade at the same school. She can show Sophie around, introduce her to friends. It'll help." Nate refilled his coffee. "You need to update your address with your employer, get mail coming here, establish residency, driver's license, bank statements, everything official." The list felt overwhelming. Kara set down her mug, pressing her palms against the counter. "This is really happening. We're really doing this." "We're already doing it. Now we're just making it bulletproof." Small footsteps sounded in the hallway. Both adults turned as Sophie appeared, still in her pajamas, her stuffed elephant tucked under one arm and her hair a wild tangle. "Mama?" Her voice was small, uncertain. Kara was across the kitchen in 3 strides, crouching down to Sophie's level. "Good morning, baby. Did you sleep okay?" "The bed is really soft." Sophie looked past her mother to Nate, suddenly shy again in the morning light. "Is it still okay that we're here?" The question broke Kara's heart. 6 years old and already trained to expect that good things were temporary, that safety could be revoked without warning. "More than okay," Nate said gently. He crouched too, meeting Sophie at eye level. You live here now, Sophie. This is your home, your room, your bed, your space. Nobody's taking that away. Really, truly? Really, truly? He held out his hand, pinky extended. Pinky promise. Sophie considered this for a long moment, then hooked her tiny pinky around his. Paisley taught me that yesterday. She said pinky promises are the most serious kind. Paisley's right, Nate smiled. How about pancakes for breakfast? I make really good pancakes. With chocolate chips? Is there any other kind? Sophie giggled, that same delighted sound from the night before, and followed Nate to the pantry to help gather ingredients. Kara watched them, something warm and terrifying expanding in her chest. This man who owed them nothing was keeping promises to her daughter, creating small moments of normalcy in the wreckage of their lives. Paisley emerged 15 minutes later, hair already brushed and pulled into a neat ponytail, wearing leggings and a shirt with a cartoon horse. She climbed onto the stool next to Sophie at the counter, both girls watching Nate flip pancakes with the concentration of children observing magic. Can Sophie and I play in my room after breakfast? Paisley asked. Sure, Nate said, but remember, quiet voices. Mrs. Chen next door works night shifts and she's probably sleeping. We'll be super quiet, Paisley promised solemnly. She turned to Sophie. Do you like horses? I have 47 horse toys. Well, 46 because one lost its head, but it still counts. Sophie's eyes went wide. 46 horses? And books about horses. And a poster. Daddy says I'm obsessed, but I just really like them. The girls dissolved into conversation about horses and which colors were best and whether unicorns counted as horses. Kara met Nate's eyes across the kitchen, and for a moment they shared something wordless, relief maybe, that the children were adapting faster than the adults. They ate breakfast together at the small dining table, Nate's mismatched plates and chipped glasses looking almost charming in the morning light. Coffee for the adults, milk for the girls, a stack of chocolate chip pancakes in the center that disappeared faster than seemed physically possible. These are the best pancakes ever, Sophie announced, syrup on her chin. Better than the diner? Kara teased gently. So much better. No offense, Mama. None taken. After breakfast, while the girls played in Paisley's room, Kara and Nate tackled the house with military efficiency. They moved Kara's meager belongings into his bedroom. Her 2 pairs of jeans hung next to his work pants in the closet, her few shirts folded into the empty dresser drawers that still smelled faintly of cedar. It felt invasive and necessary all at once. This drawer sticks, Nate said, demonstrating. You have to pull it at an angle or it jams. Good to know, good to know. Kara added a mental note to the growing list of domestic details they'd need to remember. What side of the sink is mine? Right side. I use the left, and I have this annoying habit of leaving the toothpaste cap off. Fair warning. I squeeze from the middle instead of the bottom. That'll probably drive you crazy. They were choreographing a fake marriage with the same attention to detail that real couples took years to develop. The absurdity wasn't lost on either of them, but neither laughed. The stakes were too high for humor. Kara's phone rang at 11:23 a.m., an unknown local number. Her stomach dropped. Hello. Ms. Vaughn, this is Patricia Chen from Child Protective Services. I've been assigned to conduct the home evaluations ordered by Judge Morrison. Kara's hand tightened on the phone. Yes? Hello? I'd like to schedule my first visit for this afternoon, if possible. Say, 2 o'clock? I understand the judge ordered unannounced visits, but for the initial assessment, I prefer to give families a few hours' notice. 2 o'clock is fine. We'll be here. Excellent. I'll need to speak with you, Mr. Dalton, and Sophie separately, as well as tour the home. Plan for about 2 hours. See you then. The line went dead. Kara looked at Nate, who'd stopped mid-motion putting dishes away. Social worker, 2 o'clock. That's fast. That's the point. They want to catch us before we get too comfortable. Kara checked the time. We have 2.5 hours. They moved like soldiers preparing for inspection. Nate finished the dishes while Kara vacuumed. They made sure Sophie's room looked lived in, but not chaotic. Toys on the shelf, but a few out like she'd been playing. Her clothes in the closet, but her backpack by the door ready for Monday's school start. They staged the bathroom with two toothbrushes side by side, Kara's cheap shampoo next to Nate's generic brand. They put a framed photo on the mantel, one Nate had on his phone from the diner's parking lot last night, quickly printed at the drugstore that morning, showing all four of them together. It was grainy and clearly recent, but it existed. At 1:45, Kara changed into clean jeans and a sweater that looked put together without trying too hard. Nate stayed in his work clothes, jeans and a flannel, the uniform of a man who made his living with his hands. The girls were told that a nice lady would be visiting to ask some questions, and they should tell the truth about living here and being friends. "But what if she asks if you're married?" Paisley asked, confused. "You just got married yesterday at the courthouse, right?" Nate crouched down. "We got the paper yesterday, but Kara and I have been together for a while. We're a family, okay? That's what matters. Just tell her about our house, about playing with Sophie, about how things are here." "Okay, Daddy." At exactly 2 o'clock, a silver sedan pulled into the driveway. Patricia Chen emerged carrying a leather bag and a tablet. A woman in her 50s with short gray hair, practical shoes, and eyes that had seen every conceivable family situation and learned to trust none of them. Nate opened the door before she could knock. "Miss Chen, come in." "Mr. Dalton, Ms. Vaughn." She shook hands with both, her grip firm and assessing. "Thank you for accommodating the short notice. Lovely home." "Thank you," Kara said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Water?" "Water would be fine." They settled in the living room, the social worker in the armchair, Kara and Nate on the couch with careful space between them. Not too close, not too far. Partners, not lovers. Comfortable, not performative. Ms. Chen pulled out her tablet and began typing notes. "Let's start with the basics. Mr. Dalton, you've lived in this house how long?" 3 years. Inherited it from my grandmother when she passed." "And you work in construction?" "Yes, ma'am. I run a small crew, mostly residential roofing and repairs." "Stable income?" "Stable enough. Work slows in winter, but I save for that. No missed payments on utilities or insurance." Ms. Chen nodded, typing. She turned to Kara. "Ms. Vaughn, you work at the Bluebird Diner?" "Yes. Night shifts mostly. I've been there 8 months." "And before that?" Kara had rehearsed this. "I worked at a truck stop diner about 30 miles from here. I left because the commute was killing me and the hours conflicted with Sophie's schedule." "You've had housing instability in recent months. Can you walk me through that?" Here it was. The minefield. Kara took a breath. "After my divorce, I had an apartment in town. Small, 1 bedroom, but it was ours. 3 months ago, the diner cut my hours due to slow business. I couldn't make rent. I tried to work it out with my landlord, but he had a waiting list and needed the space." She paused. "I stayed in a women's shelter for a few weeks, but the rules there were difficult. Curfews that conflicted with my work schedule, restrictions on personal items. I made the choice to live in my car temporarily while I figured out next steps." "With Sophie in the car as well?" "Yes." Kara met her eyes directly. "I know how that sounds. I know it looks like poor judgment, but the alternative was putting her in foster care or giving her to Derek, and I wasn't ready to give up. She was safe, fed, and loved. It wasn't ideal, but it was temporary." "And then you met Mr. Dalton?" "We'd already been dating for several months at that point. When he found out about my situation, he offered to help." Ms. Chen looked between them. "By marrying you immediately?" "By offering stability for our daughters," Nate said. "We were already planning a future together. The circumstances accelerated our timeline, but the commitment was always there." "That's quite convenient, given the custody hearing." "It's also true." Nate's voice stayed level. "I'm not going to apologize for helping someone I care about. Kara's a good mother who hit a rough patch. I had space and resources. Seemed like the right thing to do." Ms. Chen made notes, her expression unreadable. "Let's talk about the girls. Sophie, may I speak with you for a few minutes?" Sophie, who'd been sitting quietly on the floor playing with Paisley, looked up nervously. Kara nodded encouragement. "It's okay, baby. Just answer her questions." Ms. Chen moved to the floor, sitting cross-legged with surprising ease for someone her age. "Hi, Sophie. I like your elephant. What's its name?" "Dumbo, like the movie." That's a good name. Do you like it here at Paisley's house? It's my house too now, Sophie said, a hint of defensiveness in her small voice. Mr. Nate said so. You're right, it is. I'm sorry. Do you like living here? Yeah. My room has a nightlight that makes stars on the ceiling, and Paisley shares her toys. And the pancakes are really good. What about school? Are you excited to start at a new school? Sophie hesitated. A little scared, but Paisley's going to show me where everything is. That's nice of her. Do your mom and Mr. Nate seem happy together? Sophie tilted her head, considering with the gravity of a child who'd learned to read adult moods for survival. Mama smiles more now. She was sad a lot before, when we were in the car. And Mr. Nate is nice. He doesn't yell, and he lets us pick the movies. Does he ever get angry? No. Well, one time Paisley spilled juice and he said a bad word, but then he laughed and said it was just juice and it wasn't important. Sophie looked at Ms. Chen seriously. Bad words are if you say them mean. If you say them about an accident, it doesn't count as much. Despite herself, Ms. Chen smiled. That's a very wise observation. Thank you for talking with me, Sophie. You can go play now. Sophie scrambled back to Paisley, and the social worker stood, brushing off her pants. May I see Sophie's room? Of course. Kara led her down the hallway. The room was small but cheerful. Walls painted pale yellow, curtains with cartoon animals that had probably been Paisley's at some point, the bed neatly made with a quilt that looked handmade. Sophie's few possessions were scattered naturally. Books on the shelf, her backpack in the corner, crayons and paper on the small desk by the window. Ms. Chen examined everything with clinical efficiency, opened the closet to see clothes hanging, checked the drawers, noted the functioning smoke detector and the window lock. She picked up a drawing from the desk, something Sophie had done showing 4 stick figures holding hands in front of a yellow house. She drew this morning, Kara said quietly. First time she's drawn a house in months. Ms. Chen set it down carefully. Let's see the rest. They toured the entire house, Paisley's room, lived in and chaotic in the way of a 7-year-old's space, the bathroom with its worn fixtures but clean towels and working plumbing, the master bedroom where Kara's clothes hung in the closet alongside Nate's, where the bed was made and the surfaces clear of clutter. You sleep in here together? Ms. Chen asked. Yes, Kara said, hating the flush she felt creeping up her neck. Is that relevant? I'm establishing the nature of your relationship, Ms. Vaughn. The court needs to know this is a genuine marriage, not a legal arrangement for custody purposes. We're genuine. Kara forced herself to meet the woman's skeptical gaze. I know the timing looks suspicious. I know we did things backwards. But Nate and I are building something real here, for both our daughters. Ms. Chen made more notes. I'd like to speak with Mr. Dalton privately now. Kara left them in the living room, joining the girls in Paisley's room where they were constructing an elaborate city out of blocks. She sat on the floor trying to look relaxed while her heart hammered. What was Nate saying? Was he sticking to their story? Would he crack under pressure? 20 minutes later, Miss Chen appeared in the doorway. Paisley, may I talk to you for a moment? Paisley looked at her father, who nodded encouragement from behind the social worker. Okay. They went to the kitchen. Kara could hear the murmur of voices, but not the words. Sophie leaned against her mother, sucking her thumb, a habit she'd mostly outgrown except when stressed. Did I do good, Mama? She whispered. You did perfect, baby. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably 30 minutes, Ms. Chen gathered her things. Nate and Kara stood together in the entryway, a unified front. Thank you for your cooperation, Ms. Chen said. I'll be conducting 2 more unannounced visits over the next 30 days at random times. I'll also be checking in with Sophie's new school and speaking with both your employers. We understand, Nate said. One more thing. Ms. Chen paused at the door. I've been doing this job for 23 years. I've seen every kind of family, traditional, blended, adoptive, foster. I've seen families that look perfect on paper turn out to be nightmares. And I've seen families that shouldn't work on any logical level turn out to be exactly what the kids needed. She looked between them. I don't know yet which category you fall into, but I'm going to find out. She left, her sedan backing out of the driveway and disappearing down the street. Kara's legs gave out. She sank onto the couch, head in her hands. What did she ask you? Everything. How we met, when we decided to get married, what our daily routines look like, how we handle conflict, what my financial situation is, why I'd risk my own custody of Paisley by taking on someone else's custody battle. Nate sat beside her, careful to maintain that same calibrated distance. I told her the truth, that I know what it's like to need help and not get it. That I believe kids need stability more than they need perfection. That Kara is a good mother who deserves a chance to rebuild. Did she believe you? I don't know, but she didn't catch us in any inconsistencies, which is what matters right now. What did she ask Paisley? If she liked having Sophie here, if she was happy, if adults ever fought, or if she ever felt scared. Nate rubbed his face. Paisley told her this was the most fun she'd had in years because she finally had a sister. The words hit Kara in the chest. She said that? Yeah. Nate's smile was tired but real. Kids don't lie the way adults do. They just tell you what they feel. And apparently Paisley feels like she has a sister now. From down the hallway, laughter erupted, both girls shrieking with delight over something. The sound was so normal, so beautifully ordinary, that it made everything else feel almost manageable. One visit down, Kara said. 2 more to go. We can do this. Can we? Kara looked at him. Nate, what happens when she shows up at 3 in the morning and we're sleeping in separate rooms because we're strangers who can't actually share a bed? What happens when someone at your work or the diner mentions they've never heard you talk about a girlfriend? What happens when Derek's lawyer digs deeper and finds out our marriage certificate is dated 2 days before the custody hearing? Then we handle it. Nate's voice was steady, certain. We knew this would be hard going in. We take it one day at a time, one challenge at a time. We don't panic until there's something to panic about. I don't know how to not panic. Panic is my default setting lately. Then lean on me when you need to. That's what partners do, right? Real ones and pretend ones. The kindness in his voice made Kara's throat tight. You didn't sign up for this level of crazy. I offered, remember? You were the one sitting in a diner having a breakdown. I walked over. He paused. And for what it's worth, I don't think this is crazy. I think it's 2 parents doing whatever it takes to protect their kids. That's not crazy. That's just love. Kara wanted to argue, to point out all the ways this could still fall apart, but exhaustion was finally winning over adrenaline. She'd been running on fumes and fear for so long that the first whisper of safety felt almost dangerous, like if she let herself believe it, the universe would snatch it away. I should start dinner, she said instead. What do the girls usually eat? Paisley likes mac and cheese, chicken nuggets, basically anything beige and shaped like a cartoon character. I've been trying to sneak vegetables in, but she's on to me. Sophie's the same. Maybe we can trick them together. They cooked side by side in the small kitchen, Kara browning ground beef for tacos while Nate chopped vegetables. It should have been awkward, navigating each other's space, but somehow it wasn't. They developed an unconscious rhythm. Kara reaching for a spoon just as Nate moved it closer, Nate stepping back to give her access to the stove without being asked. The girls set the table with exaggerated care, standing on chairs to reach the cabinet for plates. Dinner was chaotic and loud, both children talking over each other about their elaborate game, and could they please have a pet rabbit, and why did vegetables have to exist when fruit was already a thing? After dinner, Nate supervised bath time while Kara cleaned the kitchen. She found herself humming, actually humming, while loading the dishwasher. When had she last felt light enough to hum? Bedtime came with story time in Sophie's room. Both girls piled on the bed, while Nate read from a chapter book about a girl who discovered she could talk to horses. Kara sat in the doorway, watching, something fierce and protective blooming in her chest. When both girls were finally asleep, the adults retreated to the living room. Nate turned on the television, volume low, some cop drama neither was really watching. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the space between them both necessary and somehow wrong. We need to talk about sleeping arrangements, Kara said finally. Ms. Chen is going to come back unannounced. If she shows up in the middle of the night, we share the bed. Nate said it matter-of-factly. Not tonight, because we're both exhausted and that would be weird, but starting soon. We pile pillows down the middle if you want, but we need to be able to say honestly that we sleep in the same room. Kara's heart rate kicked up. That's uncomfortable? Yeah, but necessary. Look, I'm not going to make this weirder than it has to be. We're both adults. We can share space without it being a thing. People do it all the time, roommates, siblings, friends on trips. Those people aren't pretending to be married. No, but we are. And if we want to sell it, we have to commit to the uncomfortable parts. Nate looked at her directly. I'm not going to touch you, Kara. I'm not going to cross any lines. You'll be safe. I just need you to trust that. The word trust hung between them. Kara had trusted Derek once, and he'd systematically destroyed her life. She trusted the system to protect her daughter, and it had nearly taken Sophie away. Trust wasn't something she gave easily anymore. But Nate had been nothing but honest since the moment he approached her booth. He'd offered help without expectations, created space without pressure. He'd stood beside her in court and opened his home and made her daughter laugh. Okay, Kara said quietly. We'll make it work. Starting tomorrow night. Tonight you take the guest room, I'll stay in mine. We both need actual sleep before we tackle the next level. They sat in silence for a while, the television flickering, both lost in their own thoughts about the impossible situation they'd created and the months stretching ahead. Nate? Kara said finally. Yeah? Thank you for all of this. I know I've said it before, but I don't think you understand how completely you saved us. You would have figured something out. People like you always do. People like me. Fighters. People who refuse to give up even when everything says they should. He glanced at her. I recognize it because I'm one too. When my wife left and everyone told me to give Paisley to my sister who had a more stable situation, I said no. When money was so tight, I was eating ramen for dinner so Paisley could have real food. I didn't quit. When the loneliness was so bad, I almost called my ex begging her to come back. I didn't, because fighters don't quit. They adapt. Is that what we're doing? Adapting? That's exactly what we're doing. And we're going to keep adapting until this becomes our normal. Kara wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that fake marriages could become real families, that desperate bargains could transform into solid foundations. But hope was dangerous. It made you vulnerable to the fall when things inevitably collapsed. Still, sitting in this warm house with her daughter sleeping safely down the hall and a partner, however temporary, beside her, Kara let herself feel the smallest flicker of possibility. Maybe miracles didn't come with instructions. Maybe you just had to build them one impossible day at a time, trusting that the foundation would hold long enough to matter. Sunday arrived with rain again, steady and cold. Nate's photographer friend showed up at noon, a woman named Jules with kind eyes and a camera that looked expensive. She took photos throughout the house, capturing staged moments that could pass for candid, the four of them on the couch playing a board game. Nate and Kara in the kitchen making lunch while the girls set the table, all of them bundled in jackets in the backyard pointing at something in the trees. Smile like you're happy, Jules instructed. Not wedding day happy, just regular life happy. Like this is normal. Kara tried. She put her arm around Nate's waist, leaned into his solid presence, tilted her head toward his shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her, natural and easy, his hand resting on her hip like he'd done it 1,000 times. Perfect, Jules said, clicking away. You two actually look like a couple. Because we're good liars, Kara thought. But maybe that was what all relationships required in the beginning, lying to yourself until the lie became truth. That evening, after Jules left with promises to have Prince by morning, Kara moved her things into the master bedroom. It felt like crossing a line, hanging her jeans next to Nate's work pants, putting her toothbrush in the holder beside his, claiming half the bed with the set of sheets she'd bought at the thrift store. Nate set up a boundary down the middle, 2 rolled blankets creating a physical barrier. Neutral zone, he said. Switzerland of the bed. Despite everything, Kara laughed. This is insane. This is survival. Nate climbed into his side, fully dressed in sweatpants and a t-shirt. We've done crazier things in the last 48 hours. Kara took the other side, also fully dressed, hyper-aware of every breath he took. The room was dark, except for the streetlight filtering through the curtains. Outside, rain drummed against the windows. Nate? Yeah? What happens after 30 days? If we pass the evaluation and the judge rules in my favor, what then? He was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. We figure it out, I guess. Maybe we transition to being roommates, co-parents. Maybe we keep up the arrangement until Sophie's older. Maybe it becomes real. The words hung in the dark. Neither of them addressed it. Let's just get through the 30 days first, Nate said finally. Everything else is future problems. Kara closed her eyes, listening to the rain and Nate's breathing and the house settling around them. Somewhere down the hall, Sophie and Paisley were sleeping in their respective rooms, safe and warm. She'd accomplished the impossible, found shelter, passed the first inspection, given her daughter a chance at stability. Now she just had to maintain the performance for 27 more days without the house of cards collapsing. 27 days sounded manageable in theory. In practice, it felt like running a marathon while someone held a gun to your head and judges scored your every stumble. Monday morning came with the chaos of getting 2 children ready for school. Sophie stood frozen in her new room, staring at the clothes Kara had laid out, jeans and a purple sweater, like they were a costume for a play she hadn't rehearsed. "I don't want to go," she whispered. "Mama, please. Can't I stay home?" Kara knelt down, smoothing her daughter's hair. "I know it's scary, baby, but Paisley will be there. And Mr. Nate talked to the principal. They're putting you in Mrs. Henderson's class. She's supposed to be really nice." "What if the kids don't like me?" "Then they don't know how lucky they'd be to have you as a friend." Kara kissed her forehead. "You're brave and kind and smart. Anyone who can't see that isn't worth worrying about." In the hallway, Nate was having a similar conversation with Paisley, who'd suddenly decided that showing Sophie around was too much responsibility. "What if I forget where things are? What if I take her to the wrong classroom? What if she gets lost and it's my fault?" "Paisley, you've been going to that school for 3 years. You know it better than most of the teachers." Nate zipped up her jacket. "And Sophie's not going to get lost. Worst case, she asks a grown-up for help. That's what they're there for." "But Dad..." "But nothing. You told Ms. Chen that Sophie was like your sister now. Sisters help each other, right?" Paisley's resistance crumbled. "Right. Then let's go help your sister have a good first day." The drive to Riverside Elementary took 12 minutes through morning traffic, both girls quiet in the back seat holding hands. Kara twisted around from the passenger seat, watching them, something tight in her chest. When had they become so close? How had 2 children managed in 3 days what she and Nate were still struggling to fake? Genuine connection. The school was a sprawling brick building with colorful murals painted on the exterior walls and a playground that had seen better decades. Parents clustered near the entrance, dropping off kids, chatting in small groups. Kara felt their eyes track her as she climbed out of Nate's truck. The new family, the unknown quantity, the woman who appeared out of nowhere with a ready-made daughter. "Ignore them," Nate murmured. "Small-town politics. Give it a week and something more interesting will happen." They walked the girls inside to the main office, where Principal Thornton, a woman in her 60s with reading glasses on a chain, greeted them with professional warmth. "Mr. Dalton, always good to see you. And you must be Kara and Sophie. Welcome to Riverside." Sophie pressed against Kara's leg, suddenly shy. "Sophie's a little nervous," Kara said. "It's her first day at a new school." "Completely understandable. Mrs. Henderson is wonderful with new students. She'll make sure Sophie feels right at home." Principal Thornton crouched down. "Sophie, did you know we have a library here with over 5,000 books? Paisley told me you like elephants. I bet Mrs. Henderson can help you find some elephant books." Sophie peeked out from behind Kara. "Really? Really? And we have art class every Wednesday. Do you like to draw?" A tiny nod. "Then you're going to love it here." Principal Thornton stood. "Paisley, would you like to walk Sophie to Mrs. Henderson's room? It's right down the hall from your classroom." Paisley took Sophie's hand with exaggerated gentleness. "Come on, I'll show you where the good water fountain is. The one by the gym tastes weird, but the one near the art room is perfect." The girls disappeared down the hallway, Paisley chattering and Sophie listening with careful attention. Kara felt tears prick her eyes. Her baby was adapting, surviving, maybe even starting to thrive. "She'll be fine," Principal Thornton said kindly. "Kids are more resilient than we give them credit for." "I hope so." "I do need to mention, we had a call this morning from Child Protective Services. Ms. Chen wanted to confirm Sophie's enrollment and get contact information for her teacher. Standard procedure for custody situations. Kara's stomach dropped. Of course, we expected that. Just wanted you to know. We're cooperating fully, but we don't discuss the details with other parents. Sophie's business is Sophie's business. The principal smiled. Now, I believe you both have places to be. We'll take good care of her. The dismissal was gentle but firm. Kara and Nate walked back to the truck in silence, both processing the small victory of getting through the first morning. You okay? Nate asked once they were on the road. I don't know. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. For someone to see through us, for Sophie to say the wrong thing, for the whole thing to collapse. That's the fear talking. Fear keeps you vigilant, which is good, but don't let it convince you we're failing when we're not. He glanced at her. You heading to the diner? Yeah, I've got the lunch shift. You? Job site across town. We're replacing a roof that should have been replaced 10 years ago. I'll be home by 6. He paused. That feels weird to say. I'll be home. Like we're actually a real couple? Yeah. They didn't say anything else until Nate dropped her at the diner. Kara climbed out, then leaned back in. Thank you for this morning, for being good with her. She's a good kid. Easy to be good with. Nate's smile was tired but genuine. Text me if anything happens. I'll keep my phone on. Kara watched him drive away, then pushed through the diner's glass door into the familiar smell of coffee and bacon grease. Rita was behind the counter, her expression shifting from neutral to knowing the moment she spotted Kara. Well, 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 look who's still alive. Hi, Rita. Hi, Rita. That's all I get? The older woman came around the counter, looking Kara up and down. You disappeared for 3 days with a strange man, texted me you were fine, and now you show up like nothing happened? I told you I was okay. Telling and proving are different things. Rita grabbed Kara's hand, examining it. No ring, but you look less like you're about to shatter into 1,000 pieces, so I'll take it. Spill. What's the situation? Kara glanced around. The diner was mostly empty, the morning rush over, lunch crowd not yet arrived. She lowered her voice anyway. Nate offered to help. I moved in. We got married at this courthouse so I could prove stable housing for the custody hearing. The judge gave us 30 days under social services supervision. Rita's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. You married him? Kara? I know how it sounds. I know it's crazy. But Rita, what choice did I have? Show up in court homeless and alone, or show up with a home and a partner who could prove stability? Kara's voice cracked. I did what I had to do to keep Sophie. Rita studied her for a long moment, then sighed and pulled Kara into a hug that smelled like cigarettes and vanilla perfume. You did what any mother would do. I'm not judging. I just want to make sure you're safe. I am. Nate's been nothing but respectful. His daughter Paisley is sweet. The house is clean. Sophie's already adjusting. Kara pulled back. It's working, Rita. Against all odds, it's actually working. For now. What happens after 30 days? I don't know. We haven't gotten that far. Well, you better start thinking about it, because fairy tales have endings, honey, and you need to decide if this one ends with happily ever after or back to square one. The lunch shift passed in a blur of orders and refills and small talk with regulars who didn't know Kara's life had completely transformed in 72 hours. She moved through the routine on autopilot, coffee to table 6, burger medium rare to table 2, check on the couple in the corner booth who'd been nursing the same pot of tea for an hour. Her phone buzzed at 2:47 p.m., a text from an unknown number. This is Ms. Chen, unannounced visit today at 4:30 p.m. Please ensure all family members are home. Kara's hand shook as she typed back, We'll be there. She called Nate immediately. He answered on the second ring, the sound of power tools in the background. What's wrong? Ms. Chen, unannounced visit at 4:30. Can you make it? I'll leave now. Pick up the girls from school at 3:15, meet you at the house by 4? Perfect. I'm asking Rita to let me leave early. Kara, breathe. We've got this. She wanted to believe him. Instead, she spent the next hour convinced that this would be the visit where everything fell apart, where Ms. Chen caught them in some crucial inconsistency, and the whole carefully constructed lie crumbled. Rita let her go at 3 without argument. Kara drove to the house, already thinking of it as home, which was dangerous, and changed quickly into jeans and a clean shirt. She straightened the living room, fluffed pillows, made sure dishes were done, and the counters clear. Normal house, normal family, nothing to see here. Nate arrived at 4:05 with both girls, who tumbled out of the truck still chattering about their day. "And then Mrs. Henderson let me read to the class," Sophie announced. "A whole book about elephants in Africa." "That's wonderful, baby." Kara kissed the top of her head. "Why don't you and Paisley go play for a bit? The social worker lady is coming back to visit." Both girls groaned but complied, disappearing into Paisley's room. Nate looked at Kara, and she saw her own anxiety reflected in his eyes. "What do you think she's looking for?" Kara asked. "Proof that we're lying, cracks in the story, signs that this isn't real." He moved closer, lowering his voice. "We need to sell this harder than last time. She's going to push, try to catch us off guard." "How do we sell something that isn't real?" "By remembering why we're doing this, by focusing on the girls and the fact that this, whatever this is giving them stability." Nate reached out, then stopped, his hand hovering between them. "Can I?" "Can you what?" "Touch you. Not weird, just married people touch casually, a hand on the shoulder, standing close. If we look uncomfortable in each other's space, she'll notice." Kara's heart hammered, but she nodded. "Okay." Nate's hand settled on her shoulder, warm and solid. "Breathe. You're safe. We're going to get through this." Ms. Chen arrived at exactly 4:30, her silver sedan pulling into the driveway like an omen. This time she didn't knock, just opened the door and walked in, calling out, "Mr. Dalton? Ms. Vaughn? It's Patricia Chen." "In the living room," Nate called back. The social worker entered, eyes already scanning, cataloging, judging. She noted their proximity on the couch, Nate's hand still on Kara's shoulder, the family photos now displayed on the mantel. "New pictures," Ms. Chen observed. "We finally got them printed," Kara said. "Been meaning to for weeks, but life gets busy." Ms. Chen picked up one, the four of them in the backyard, all laughing at something off camera. Jules had caught a genuine moment when Paisley tripped and Nate caught her. Everyone dissolved in relieved giggles. "This looks recent." "Took it Sunday. We had a lazy morning at home." Nate's voice was casual. Girls were playing outside despite the rain. Ms. Chen set it down and pulled out her tablet. "I'd like to see how the girls are settling in. May I speak with Sophie again?" "Of course." Kara went to Paisley's room. Both girls were on the floor with coloring books, so absorbed they didn't notice her at first. "Sophie, honey, Miss Chen wants to talk to you." Sophie looked up, wariness creeping into her expression. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, baby, she just wants to see how you're doing." In the living room, Ms. Chen had moved to the floor again, making herself less intimidating. Sophie sat across from her, hands folded in her lap. "How was your first day at the new school, Sophie?" "Good. Mrs. Henderson is nice, and Paisley showed me everything." "Are the other kids nice to you?" "Some are. This one girl, Emma, she said my elephant drawing was pretty. And another girl, Madison, she let me sit with her at lunch." "That's wonderful. Do you feel safe at school?" Sophie nodded seriously. "Paisley said if anyone's mean, I should tell Mrs. Henderson and she'll fix it. And Mr. Nate said the same thing." "You call him Mr. Nate? Not Dad?" Sophie's brow furrowed. "He's not my dad. My dad is Derek. But Mr. Nate is nice. He makes breakfast and reads stories, and he doesn't get mad when I spill things." Ms. Chen made notes. "What about at home? Do your mom and Mr. Nate fight?" "No. Yesterday, Mama couldn't find her keys and she was frustrated, but Mr. Nate helped her look and he said frustration is normal and it's okay. Then we found them in the couch." Sophie paused. "They don't yell. It's quiet here. I like that." "What about bedtime? Where does everyone sleep?" "I sleep in my room. Paisley sleeps in her room. Mama and Mr. Nate sleep in their room." Sophie said it matter-of-factly, like this was the most obvious thing in the world. "You've seen them in their room together?" "Yeah, this morning I had a bad dream and I went to get Mama. She was in bed with Mr. Nate, but she came right away and sat with me until I felt better." Kara's breath caught. That was true. Sophie had woken around 3 a.m. with nightmares about losing her elephant. Kara had been in the master bedroom, careful not to wake Nate, and had spent 20 minutes in Sophie's room soothing her back to sleep. She hadn't realized Sophie had seen them sharing the bed. Sometimes the truth worked better than any lie they could manufacture. "Thank you, Sophie. You can go play now." Sophie scampered off, and Ms. Chen stood, brushing off her pants. "I'd like to tour the house again. See how things have evolved since my last visit." They walked through together, Kara doing the tour this time while Nate stayed with the girls. In Sophie's room, evidence of actual living had accumulated. Drawings taped to the walls, library books from school stacked on the nightstand, a jacket thrown over the desk chair. "She's settling in," Ms. Chen observed. "She feels safe here. That's everything to her right now." In the master bedroom, the bed was unmade. Kara had forgotten to make it that morning in the rush of getting everyone ready. Ms. Chen noted this with what might have been approval. Staged homes were always suspiciously perfect. Real homes had unmade beds and mismatched socks on the floor. "How are you adjusting to cohabitation, Ms. Vaughn? It's a big change, going from your own space to sharing with a partner and his daughter." Kara thought carefully. "It's an adjustment, yeah. I'm not used to someone else loading the dishwasher or doing laundry. Nate folds towels differently than I do, which shouldn't matter, but it's weird getting used to. And Paisley has very strong opinions about what constitutes proper pancake shape." She smiled despite herself. "But it's good weird. Like, I forgot what it felt like to have backup, someone to tag in when I'm exhausted, someone who actually wants to help instead of keeping score of who does what." "That's a reference to your ex-husband?" Derek kept a mental spreadsheet of every task, every expense, every favor. Being with Nate is the opposite. He just does things because they need doing, not because he's earning points. Kara met Ms. Chen's eyes. "I know you think this happened too fast. I know it looks convenient, but I've been married before to someone who looked perfect on paper, and that was a disaster. This might look messy on paper, but it feels right in reality." Ms. Chen made notes, her expression unreadable. They returned to the living room where Nate was on the floor with both girls, all three of them constructing something elaborate with blocks. "Mr. Dalton, a moment?" Nate stood, following Ms. Chen to the kitchen. Kara couldn't hear the conversation, but she watched through the doorway. Nate's posture relaxed, his responses measured, no signs of the panic that was probably churning beneath the surface. After 15 minutes, Ms. Chen gathered her things. "Thank you for accommodating the unannounced visit. I'll be back one more time before the 30 days are up. You won't know when." "We understand," Kara said. At the door, Ms. Chen paused. "For what it's worth, the girls seem happy. That counts for a lot." Then she was gone, leaving Kara and Nate and two confused children in her wake. "Is everything okay?" Paisley asked. "Why does that lady keep coming here?" Nate crouched down. "She's just making sure everyone's happy and healthy. It's her job. But yes, everything's okay." That night, after the girls were asleep and Kara and Nate were in their respective sides of the bed, with the blanket barrier between them, Nate spoke into the darkness. "You did good today. The thing you said about my ex keeping score, that was smart, personal, but not too personal. It was also true. Derek tracked everything like evidence for a trial." Kara stared at the ceiling. "How many more days?" 24. "It feels like years. It feels like yesterday. Time's weird when you're living a lie." Kara rolled onto her side, facing the neutral zone. "Is it a lie, though? I mean, legally we're married, we live together, we're raising kids together. At what point does the performance become reality?" Nate was quiet for so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, "I don't know, maybe when we stop thinking of it as a performance." The week passed in a strange rhythm, mornings getting kids ready for school, days working their respective jobs, evenings cooking dinner and helping with homework and pretending this was normal. Sophie blossomed at Riverside Elementary, coming home each day with new stories about Emma and Madison and the library books Mrs. Henderson recommended. Paisley reveled in her role as guide and protector, taking her big sister responsibilities with endearing seriousness. Friday night, Nate suggested pizza and a movie. They ordered from the local place, pepperoni for the adults, cheese for the girls, and settled on the couch together. The girls claimed the floor with pillows and blankets, turning it into a fort while some animated movie played on the television. Halfway through, Sophie fell asleep against Kara's leg, her elephant tucked under her chin. Paisley lasted 10 minutes longer before curling into Nate's side, her breathing evening out into sleep. "Should we move them to bed?" Kara whispered. "Give it a few minutes. They look comfortable." So they sat in the flickering television light with sleeping children draped over them, and for the first time since this insane arrangement began, Kara felt something close to peace. "This is nice," she said quietly. "Yeah, it is. I keep waiting for Derek to show up, to find some new way to destroy this." "He can't, not without violating the judge's order. He gets supervised visitation tomorrow, by the way. 2 hours at the community center, social worker present." Kara's chest tightened. "Sophie's gonna hate that." "Probably, but it's required. And honestly, it might work in our favor. If Derek's awkward with her or doesn't know what to do, it proves our point that he's not actually invested in parenting." The doorbell rang at 8:47 p.m., shattering the peace. Both adults froze. Visitors at this hour were never good news. Nate carefully extracted himself from Paisley and went to the door. Kara heard male voices, one Nate's, one unfamiliar. Then Nate was calling her name, his tone careful. She laid Sophie gently on the couch and went to the entryway. A police officer stood on the porch, young and uncomfortable, his hand resting on his belt. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Brooks. I need to speak with you and Mr. Dalton about a complaint that was filed." Kara's stomach plummeted. "What kind of complaint?" "Anonymous tip called in to CPS alleging that this home is unsafe for children. Claims of domestic disturbance, unstable living conditions, and questions about the validity of your marriage." The world tilted. Kara grabbed the doorframe for support. "That's ridiculous," Nate said firmly. "This home is stable. CPS has already visited twice and found everything in order." "I understand, sir, but I'm required to follow up on the complaint. May I come in and look around?" They had no choice. Officer Brooks walked through the house with clinical efficiency, noting the sleeping children on the couch, the clean kitchen, the family photos on the walls. He checked the bedrooms, the bathrooms, looked for signs of drugs or alcohol or anything that would justify the complaint. He found nothing because there was nothing to find. "Everything appears to be in order," he said finally. "I'll file a report stating the home is suitable. But I have to tell you, whoever made this complaint knew specific details about your situation. The custody hearing, the recent marriage, the CPS supervision, this wasn't random." After he left, Kara turned to Nate, fury and fear warring in her chest. "Derek. It had to be Derek. Probably. Or his lawyer. They're trying to rattle us, create enough chaos that we slip up." "It's working." "No, it's not." Nate's voice was steel. "We didn't slip up. The officer found nothing because there's nothing wrong here. Derek can file all the complaints he wants. If they're baseless, they just make him look desperate." "But what if he keeps escalating? What if he shows up here or tries to take Sophie from school? Or then we handle it." "Kara, look at me." Nate waited until she met his eyes. "We've come this far. We've passed 2 unannounced visits. We've got Sophie settled in school. We've built something here that's working. Derek trying to tear it down just proves we're doing something right." Kara wanted to believe him, but the fear was a living thing in her chest, clawing at her certainty. They carried the sleeping girls to their beds, then retreated to their own room. The blanket barrier seemed pointless now. They were past pretending there was real distance between them. Kara lay on her side, facing Nate's side, and found him watching her in the dim light from the window. "You okay?" he asked. "No. Yes. I don't know." She pulled the blanket tighter. "I'm terrified that we're going to lose, that Derek's going to find the crack in our armor, and Sophie's going to pay the price." "Then we don't give him a crack to find. We keep doing exactly what we've been doing, showing up, being consistent, proving that this home is stable and safe. For 23 more days. For 23 more days. And then we figure out what comes next." Sleep didn't come easy. Kara lay awake listening to Nate's breathing even out, wondering what Derek's next move would be, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake trusting a stranger with everything that mattered. But when she finally drifted off near dawn, her last thought was that Sophie had slept through the night again, peaceful and safe, dreaming in a real bed in a warm house with people who wanted her there. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. Saturday morning brought the dreaded supervised visitation. Kara dressed Sophie carefully, trying not to project her own anxiety onto her daughter. "Remember, You're going to see your dad today, just for a little while. Sophie's face fell. Do I have to? Yes, baby. The judge said so. But Ms. Chen will be there the whole time, and Dad and I will be right outside if you need us. Mr. Nate, too? Mr. Nate, too. The community center was a squat brick building with fluorescent lights and the faint smell of industrial cleaner. Ms. Chen met them in the lobby, along with Derek, who looked irritated to be there. Sophie, he said, his smile forced. How's my girl? Sophie pressed against Kara's leg. Hi. We've got the room reserved for 2 hours, Ms. Chen said. There are games, art supplies, books. Sophie, your dad wants to spend some time with you. Derek reached for Sophie's hand. She took it reluctantly, glancing back at Kara with pleading eyes. You're okay, Kara mouthed. I'm right here. They watched through the observation window as Derek tried to engage Sophie in conversation. He'd brought gifts, expensive toys that Sophie examined politely, but without enthusiasm. He asked questions about school that she answered in monosyllables. He suggested they draw together, but Sophie's attention kept drifting to the window where Kara and Nate stood. This is painful to watch, Nate murmured. He doesn't know her at all. Doesn't know she likes elephants, that she's left-handed, that she hates the color orange. Kara's hands clenched. He brought her a stuffed bear when she's terrified of bears because of a nightmare she had last year. After 90 minutes, Sophie was in tears. Miss Chen brought her out early and Derek followed, his expression thunderous. She's being difficult on purpose, he snapped. You've turned her against me. I've done nothing of the sort, Kara said coldly. She's upset because you're a stranger to her. You chose not to be involved for 18 months. You don't get to walk back in and expect her to fall into your arms. This is exactly the kind of parental alienation I warned the judge about. No, this is a child reacting honestly to a parent who abandoned her. Kara picked up Sophie, who wrapped her legs around her mother's waist and buried her face in Kara's neck. You want a relationship with your daughter? Then put in the work. Show up consistently. Learn who she actually is instead of who you think she should be. Derek's jaw clenched. We'll see what the judge has to say about this. Ms. Chen intervened. Mr. Lane, the child's distress is evident and not manufactured. I observed your interaction. You made minimal effort to engage with her interests or comfort level. We'll try again next week, but I suggest you come prepared to actually connect with Sophie rather than performing for an audience. The drive home was quiet except for Sophie's occasional sniffles. Paisley, who'd come along for the trip, held Sophie's hand in the back seat and said nothing, somehow understanding that silence was what her friend needed. At home, Kara ran a bath for Sophie while Nate made hot chocolate. They gathered in Sophie's room afterward, both girls in pajamas despite it being mid-afternoon, and Nate read 3 chapters of the horse book while Kara braided Sophie's damp hair. Is Dad mad at me? Sophie asked quietly. No, baby. He's frustrated, but that's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. I didn't want to be mean. I just didn't know what to say to him. That's okay. You don't have to perform for anyone. Not for your dad, not for the judge, not for anyone. Kara kissed the top of her head. You just have to be yourself. That night, after the girls were finally asleep, Kara found Nate on the back porch despite the cold. She brought him a beer from the fridge and sat beside him on the steps. Thanks for today, she said, for being there. Where else would I be? I don't know. Most people would run from this level of drama. Most people didn't offer to fake marry someone in a diner at midnight. Nate took a sip of beer. Besides, I don't think of it as your drama. It's our situation now. We're in this together. The word "our" settled into Kara's chest, warm and dangerous. 22 days left, she said. Feels like both forever and not enough time. Not enough time for what? Nate looked at her, really looked, and something shifted in his expression. To figure out what happens when this stops being temporary. Kara's breath caught. Nate, I'm not saying anything has to change. I'm just saying I've noticed that the blanket barrier disappeared 3 days ago and neither of us mentioned it. That we stand closer now without thinking about it. That Paisley asked yesterday if you were staying forever and I didn't know how to answer. He paused. I'm saying maybe we should talk about what we're actually doing here before the 30 days are up and we're forced to make decisions without planning. I don't know how to do this, Kara admitted. I don't know how to tell the difference between what's real and what's performance anymore. I don't know if what I'm feeling is genuine or just gratitude mixed with fear. Yeah, same. They sat in companionable silence, both lost in thoughts about futures that might exist and pasts that still haunted them. Finally, Kara stood. I'm going to bed. You coming? In a minute. But when she climbed under the covers 5 minutes later, Nate was there. And when she unconsciously rolled toward the middle in her sleep, neither of them pulled away. The second week transformed something fundamental. Kara couldn't pinpoint the exact moment when pretending stopped feeling like acting and started feeling like living. But somewhere between Tuesday's grocery shopping trip, where they argued good-naturedly about cereal brands, and Thursday's impromptu dance party in the kitchen while making spaghetti, the lines blurred beyond recognition. Sophie noticed first. On Wednesday evening, she was sitting at the kitchen table working on homework while Kara chopped vegetables and Nate helped Paisley build a model solar system for science class. The scene was painfully domestic, the kind of evening that happened in functional families without anyone remarking on it. Sophie looked up from her math worksheet, studied the three adults moving around each other with unconscious coordination, and smiled. What is it, baby? Kara asked, noticing. Nothing. I just like it here. Sophie returned to her subtraction problems, but the contentment in her small voice hung in the air like a blessing. Thursday brought the second supervised visitation with Derek, and it went marginally better than the first, meaning Sophie lasted the full 2 hours without crying, though she spent most of them coloring quietly while Derek made increasingly desperate attempts at conversation. Ms. Chen's notes reflected what everyone could see. Derek loved the idea of his daughter more than he understood the actual child sitting across from him. How's school? He'd asked. Good. What's your favorite subject? Art? That's nice. You know, when I was your age, I was really into sports. Maybe we could throw a ball around sometime? Sophie had looked at him like he'd suggested they sprout wings and fly. I don't really like sports. Oh, well, what do you like? Reading, and elephants, and playing with Paisley. Derek's expression had soured at Paisley's name, as if the mention of Nate's daughter personally offended him. But he'd rallied, asking more questions that Sophie answered dutifully while clearly wishing to be anywhere else. In the observation room, Nate had leaned close to Kara. He's trying, at least. Trying and succeeding are different things. Look at her body language. She's closed off, uncomfortable. She's doing this because she has to, not because she wants to. Ms. Chen sees it too. That's what matters. When visitation ended, Derek had cornered Kara in the parking lot while Nate buckled the girls into the truck. We need to talk, Derek said, his voice low and urgent. I don't think that's appropriate. This arrangement with Dalton, it's not real, Kara. I know it, you know it, and eventually the judge will know it too. Kara forced herself to meet his eyes. My marriage is absolutely real. We have documentation, witnesses, a home together. You have a performance, a desperate stunt to avoid losing custody. Derek stepped closer. I'm offering you one chance to end this with dignity. Sign over custody voluntarily. I'll make sure you have generous visitation rights. Sophie will want for nothing. Private school, dance lessons, summer camps. Everything you can't give her. She doesn't want things, Derek. She wants her mother. She wants stability, security, a future that isn't held together by duct tape and delusion. His voice turned almost gentle. You're drowning, and you're dragging our daughter down with you. Let me save her. Let me give her the life she deserves. For a split second, just a heartbeat, Kara felt the weight of his words. The exhaustion of maintaining the charade, the constant fear of discovery, the knowledge that one mistake could cost everything. Maybe Derek was right. Maybe Sophie would be better off in his pristine house with his perfect fiancé and his stable income. Then she looked at the truck where Sophie sat between Nate and Paisley, all three of them laughing at something on Paisley's phone, and the moment of doubt evaporated. Sophie has the life she deserves. She has a mother who fights for her, a safe home, a friend who treats her like a sister, and two parents who actually show up every day. Your money can't buy that, Derek. Your house can't replace it. And your guilt about being an absent father for 18 months doesn't give you the right to take her from the family she's built. Kara's voice was steady, certain. See you at the next visitation. She walked away, feeling his anger radiating behind her but refusing to look back. In the truck, Nate glanced at her. "You okay?" "Better than okay. Let's go home." The word felt right. Not Nate's house, not the temporary shelter. Home. Where Sophie laughed and Paisley shared her toys and dinner was chaotic, and bedtime was a negotiation, and everything felt real in the way that mattered most. Friday evening, Nate came home from work carrying a large envelope. Kara was in the kitchen marinating chicken for dinner while the girls played in the backyard, visible through the window, safe, their laughter carrying on the early evening breeze. "What's that?" she asked. "Court documents from Derek's lawyer." Nate's expression was grim. "They filed a motion requesting an emergency modification of the custody arrangement. They're claiming new evidence of instability and requesting an immediate hearing." Kara's hand stilled. "What new evidence?" "The police visit last week. They're arguing that a home under investigation by law enforcement is inherently unsafe, regardless of the officer's findings." Nate set the envelope on the counter. "They've also submitted affidavits from neighbors claiming they've never seen you before last week, questioning the legitimacy of our marriage." "That's because I wasn't here before last week. We didn't lie about that. We said we got married recently." "I know, but they're spinning it as fraud, saying we entered into a marriage of convenience solely to circumvent the custody ruling." He rubbed his face. "The hearing is set for next Friday, 7 days from now." Kara felt the floor tilt beneath her. "That's before the 30 days are up. The judge said she'd review at the end of 30 days. Derek's lawyer is arguing that new circumstances warrant earlier intervention." Nate moved closer, his hand finding hers on the counter. "We knew he wouldn't go down easy. He's desperate, and he's fighting with everything he has." "What do? "We fight harder. We document everything. The good school reports Sophie's already getting, the friendships she's forming, the stability we've provided. We get character witnesses who can testify to the health of this household. We make it impossible for Derek to paint us as anything other than what we are." "Which is what exactly?" Kara's voice cracked. "Be honest, Nate. What are we? A real family or an elaborate lie?" Nate was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing patterns on the back of her hand. "I think we're something that started as a lie and became real when we weren't looking. I think we're two people who made a desperate choice and accidentally built something worth keeping." "Accidentally? Is there a better word for it? We didn't plan this. We didn't sit down and decide to create a blended family. We collided in a crisis and somehow made it work." He turned her hand over, palm up, studying the lines there like they held answers. "But it does work, Kara. The girls are thriving. You're sleeping through the night. I'm coming home to a house that feels alive instead of empty. Whatever we're calling this, it's better than what either of us had before. Better enough to survive a court battle? It has to be. Because I'm not letting Derek take Sophie, and I'm not letting this family fall apart just because it started unconventionally." The back door slammed open and both girls tumbled in, Paisley carrying a jar with what appeared to be a very confused grasshopper. "Can we keep him?" Paisley asked breathlessly. "His name is Gerald, and he needs a family." "Absolutely not," Nate said, but he was smiling. "Gerald needs to be outside with his grasshopper friends. Take him back and let him go." "But Dad," "No buts. Gerald is not a pet. Go release him before dinner." The girls trudged back outside, debating Gerald's fate in hushed conspiratorial tones. Kara watched them through the window, these two children who'd become inseparable in less than 2 weeks. "We're going to win," she said quietly. "We have to." "We will." Nate squeezed her hand. "I'm not giving this up without a fight." Over the weekend, they built their defense like soldiers preparing for siege. Nate called Principal Thornton, who agreed to write a letter documenting Sophie's adjustment and the positive impact of family stability. Rita agreed to testify about Kara's character and work ethic. Mrs. Chen from next door, different Chen from the social worker, provided a statement about the household being quiet and well-maintained. Jules, the photographer, confirmed the timeline of their relationship and the authenticity of the photos. Sunday night, they sat at the kitchen table surrounded by paperwork, court documents, school reports, bank statements proving financial stability, the marriage certificate, photos, witness statements. It looked like evidence of a life built deliberately rather than desperately. "This is good," Nate said, organizing everything into folders. Derek's lawyer is going to have a hard time arguing instability when we have this much documentation of the opposite. Unless they argue that all of it is manufactured, that we created a paper trail to support a lie. Kara pressed her fingers to her temples. Every piece of evidence we have can be spun as proof of deception rather than proof of authenticity. Then we lean into the truth. We admit the timeline is compressed. We acknowledge that circumstances accelerated our plans. But we show that the foundation was already there, that we weren't strangers who met 3 weeks ago. We were two people who'd been building something and chose to formalize it when crisis forced our hand. Except we were strangers 3 weeks ago. Nate looked at her, something intense and honest in his expression. Were we? Or were we two people in similar situations who recognized something in each other? I saw you in that diner for months before the night I spoke to you. I saw you showing up exhausted but determined. I saw you being patient with difficult customers. I saw you saving leftover food to take to Sophie. I didn't know your name, but I knew your character. Kara's throat tightened. I noticed you too. You and Paisley, the way you'd help her with homework in the booth, never getting frustrated even when she didn't understand. The way you'd read to her even though you were clearly exhausted from work. The way you tipped well, even when you ordered the cheapest thing on the menu. She paused. I thought you were a good father. I thought if I ever dated again, I'd want someone like that. And now you're married to someone like that. Now I'm married to you. Kara said it simply, stating fact. For better or worse. Accidentally? She smiled despite the weight of the coming week. Maybe not as accidentally as we thought. Monday brought Ms. Chen's final unannounced visit. She arrived at 6:47 a.m. before the household had fully woken, and found Nate making coffee in sweatpants while Kara braided Sophie's hair at the kitchen table and Paisley searched for her homework in the living room chaos. Good morning, Ms. Chen said from the doorway. Hope I'm not interrupting. Just the usual morning madness, Nate said, pouring her a cup of coffee without asking. Girls, say good morning to Ms. Chen. 2 chorus of sleepy good mornings followed. Ms. Chen sat at the table, observing the morning routine with clinical attention. She watched Kara pack lunches while simultaneously helping Sophie with her jacket. She watched Nate find Paisley's homework under the couch cushions and deliver it with exaggerated ceremony. She watched the family move around each other with the practiced ease of people who'd been doing this for years rather than weeks. How are things, Sophie? Ms. Chen asked. Good. We're doing multiplication in school, and it's really hard. But Mrs. Henderson says I'm getting better. Sophie stuffed her elephant into her backpack. And I made a new friend named Aiden. He has a hamster named Pickles. That's wonderful. Are you happy here? Sophie paused, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. Yeah, I miss my old apartment sometimes because it was just me and Mama. But this is better because Paisley's here and Mr. Nate makes really good pancakes and nobody yells and I have my own room with the star nightlight. What about your dad? You've been seeing him on weekends. Sophie's expression clouded. He's okay, but he doesn't really know me. Like, he asked if I wanted to play soccer and I don't even like soccer. And he keeps calling me princess, but I told him I don't like that and he keeps doing it anyway. Ms. Chen made notes. After breakfast, she followed them through the morning routine. The chaos of getting backpacks and shoes, the reminder about permission slips and library books, the quick kisses goodbye before the girls ran to meet the school bus at the corner. Then it was just the 3 adults in the sudden quiet of the morning. I'll be submitting my final report to Judge Morrison this week, Ms. Chen said. I want to be clear with both of you about what I've observed over the past month. Kara's heart hammered. This was it, the moment that would determine everything. I've conducted 3 visits at different times of day. I've spoken with Sophie's teacher, her principal, her father during supervised visitation, and various neighbors. I've reviewed your financial records, employment history, and home environment. Ms. Chen set down her coffee cup. What I've found is a household that functions well despite its unconventional origins. The children are happy, healthy, and thriving. The adults are cooperative and engaged. The home is safe, clean, and stable. But, Nate prompted, because there was clearly a but coming. But the timeline remains concerning. The speed with which this arrangement came together, the proximity to the custody hearing, the lack of established history, these things make it difficult to determine long-term viability. She paused. I'm not questioning that what you've built in the past 3 weeks is real. I'm questioning whether it's sustainable. What would convince you it's sustainable? Kara asked. What more can we show you? Time. Time is the only real proof. But Judge Morrison isn't going to wait for years of data. Ms. Chen stood, gathering her things. My report will reflect what I've seen, a functional household providing appropriate care. Whether that's enough to counter Mr. Lane's resources and concerns about fraud, I can't predict. After she left, Kara sagged against the counter. That wasn't encouraging. It wasn't discouraging either. She said functional household, appropriate care, children thriving. That's not the language she'd use if she thought this was a disaster. Nate pulled her into a hug. The gesture automatic now, unthinking. We've done everything right, Kara. Everything. Now we trust that it's enough. The week crawled forward like a wounded animal. Tuesday, Kara got called into Rita's office at the diner, a tiny closet that smelled like coffee and cigarettes, and found the older woman looking uncharacteristically serious. Derek's lawyer called me, Rita said without preamble. Wanted to ask questions about your employment history, your relationship with Nate, how often Sophie came into the diner when you were working. Kara's blood went cold. What did you tell them? The truth, that you're a damn good worker who never missed a shift unless your kid was sick. That you mentioned Nate as someone you'd been seeing for months before the marriage. That Sophie was well cared for even during the hardest times. Rita lit a cigarette despite the no-smoking policies she herself had instituted. But I'm going to be straight with you, honey. That lawyer was fishing. He wanted me to say something that would prove you're an unfit mother or that your marriage is fake. When I didn't give him what he wanted, he got nasty. I'm sorry you got dragged into this. Don't apologize for fighting for your kid. Apologize for not fighting. That's when you failed. Rita exhaled smoke toward the ceiling. I'm testifying Friday. Already told them I'd be there. I'm going to tell that judge exactly what kind of mother you are and let the chips fall where they may. Wednesday, Nate's boss called him into a similar conversation. The construction company owner had been contacted by Derek's legal team, questioning Nate's stability and ability to provide appropriate supervision for children given his work hours. I told them you're the most reliable worker I've got, his boss said, a gruff man named Tommy who'd known Nate since high school. I told them you've never missed a day except when Paisley was sick, that you're always on time, that you're good with the crew and better with clients. I don't know what they were expecting me to say. That I'm unreliable and reckless, probably. Well, they didn't get it. You need Friday off for court? Yeah. Might need the whole day depending on how long this goes. Take it. And Nate? Tommy clapped him on the shoulder. Whatever you've got going with that lady and her kid, it's working. Paisley's been happier in the last month than I've seen her in years. You coming to work whistling for Christ's sake. Don't let some slick lawyer take that away. Thursday night, Kara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed watching the ceiling fan rotate slowly, Nate breathing steadily beside her, and ran through every possible outcome of tomorrow's hearing. Best case, Judge Morrison reviewed Ms. Chen's report, denied Derek's motion, and they continued the arrangement until the full 30 days expired. Worst case, the judge ruled the marriage was fraudulent, transferred custody to Derek immediately, and possibly charged Kara and Nate with contempt of court. Stop catastrophizing, Nate murmured in the darkness. I thought you were asleep. How could I sleep with you radiating anxiety like a nuclear reactor? He rolled toward her. What's the worst-case scenario running through your head right now? That I lose Sophie tomorrow. That everything we've built means nothing. That Derek was right, and I've been delusional thinking we could pull this off. And what's the best-case scenario? That we win. That the judge sees what Ms. Chen saw. A family that works. That Sophie stays here and we get to keep doing this. Keep doing what, exactly? Kara turned her head, finding Nate's face barely visible in the darkness. This, whatever this is. Coming home to someone who asks about my day. Cooking dinner for 4 instead of 2. Watching the girls become sisters, feeling like I'm not drowning alone anymore. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Falling asleep next to someone who doesn't make me feel like I have to be perfect to deserve being loved. The words hung between them, too honest, too raw. Kara immediately wanted to take them back. I didn't mean, I know what you meant. Nate's hand found hers under the blanket. I feel it too. This thing we accidentally built. It's real, Kara. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever the judge rules, what we have here is real. Real enough? Real enough. He squeezed her hand. Now try to sleep. We need to be sharp tomorrow. Kara closed her eyes and focused on the warmth of his hand, the steady rhythm of his breathing, the solid presence of someone who'd chosen to stand beside her when running away would have been easier. She didn't fall asleep so much as drift into uneasy waiting, counting down the hours until the hearing that would decide everything. Friday morning was organized chaos. Kara dressed carefully in a borrowed suit, navy blue, professional, borrowed from Jules, who was roughly her size. Nate wore slacks and a button-down, his work-roughened hands looking incongruous against the formal clothes. They dropped the girls at Mrs. Chen's house with promises to pick them up soon, both children hugging their respective parents with the fierce grip of kids who understood something important was happening even if they didn't know the details. The courthouse was the same imposing building as before, but this time Kara climbed the steps with Nate's hand solid in hers and Rita waiting by the entrance with Tommy and Jules and Principal Thornton, a small army of people who'd agreed to testify on their behalf. Ready? Rita asked. As we'll ever be. Inside, Derek waited with his lawyer, the thin man with cold eyes who looked like he ate small victories for breakfast. Melissa stood beside Derek, wearing a tasteful dress and a diamond ring that probably cost more than Kara's car. They looked like the perfect family in waiting, polished and successful, and everything a judge would want for a child. Except Sophie wasn't here. Sophie was at Mrs. Chen's house playing with Paisley, safe and happy, and choosing every day to be exactly where she was. Judge Morrison's courtroom was exactly as Kara remembered, wood-paneled and formal, designed to intimidate. They took their seats, Derek's legal team on one side, Kara and Nate with their makeshift defense on the other. The judge entered and everyone stood. She reviewed the documents before her with sharp eyes that missed nothing. This is an emergency hearing on Mr. Lane's motion for immediate custody modification, she began. Mr. Lane's counsel, please present your argument. Derek's lawyer stood, smooth and confident. Your Honor, we're here because new evidence has emerged that calls into serious question the suitability of Ms. Vaughn's current living arrangement. First, the timeline. Ms. Vaughn and Mr. Dalton were legally married exactly 2 days before the initial custody hearing, a marriage certificate obtained in haste with no prior documentation of cohabitation or joint finances. Second, law enforcement was called to the residence on a complaint of domestic instability just 2 weeks into this arrangement. Third, witness testimony from neighbors indicates that Ms. Vaughn was never seen at this address prior to the custody hearing. These facts paint a clear picture of a marriage entered solely to circumvent this court's custody determination. He continued for 20 minutes, methodically building a case that Kara and Nate had committed fraud, that Sophie was being used as a pawn in their scheme, that Derek's home offered genuine stability, while Kara's offered only deception. When he finally sat down, Judge Morrison turned to Nate. Mr. Dalton, you're representing yourself and Ms. Vaughn. Do you have a response? Nate stood, and Kara saw his hands shake slightly before he steadied them. Your Honor, everything Mr. Lane's lawyer said is technically true and completely misleading. Yes, Kara and I got married 2 days before the custody hearing, but we'd been in a relationship for 6 months before that. We didn't live together because Kara had her own apartment, until she lost it due to circumstances beyond her control. Yes, the police were called to our home on an anonymous complaint. The responding officer found nothing concerning and filed a report stating the home was suitable. And yes, neighbors didn't see Kara before the hearing because she wasn't living there yet. We were dating, not cohabiting, which is completely normal. Judge Morrison made notes. The court is less concerned with the technical timeline than with the authenticity of the relationship. What evidence can you provide that this marriage is genuine rather than a legal maneuver? We have character witnesses who can speak to the health of our household. We have documentation from Sophie's school showing dramatic improvement in her grades and behavior. We have Ms. Chen's report from 3 separate home visits. We have financial records showing combined expenses and shared responsibilities. Nate paused. But more than that, Your Honor, we have the truth. which is that this started as two desperate people helping each other and became a real family when neither of us was looking. That's a touching narrative, Mr. Dalton, but this court deals in facts rather than feelings. Then here's a fact. Sophie has nightmares about living in the car with her mother. She used to wake up crying 3 or 4 times a week, terrified of losing her home again. Since moving in with us, she's slept through the night every single night except once. Here's another fact. She's made friends at school for the first time in a year. She's drawing pictures of our house with 4 people in it. She told Ms. Chen she feels safe. Nate's voice strengthened. Mr. Lane can offer money and private schools and a big house, but he can't offer what Sophie actually needs, which is her mother who fought to keep her, and a home where she feels secure. Derek's lawyer objected. This is pure emotion, Your Honor, not evidence. Overruled. Mr. Dalton is speaking to the child's welfare, which is central to this case. Continue. Nate called Rita first. The older woman took the stand with the no-nonsense attitude of someone who'd seen too much life to be intimidated by legal proceedings. She testified about Kara's work ethic, her dedication to Sophie, the months she'd watched Kara fight to stay afloat while Derek contributed nothing. That girl worked herself to the bone, Rita said flatly. 2 jobs, unpredictable hours, and she still showed up to every single one of Sophie's school events. Meanwhile, Mr. Lane over there couldn't be bothered to send a birthday present on time. Derek's lawyer tried to discredit her, but Rita was unshakable. She'd known Kara for months, had observed the relationship with Nate develop naturally, and had no doubt that what they'd built was real. Principal Thornton testified next about Sophie's adjustment, the marked improvement in her emotional state, the positive influence of having Paisley as a friend and advocate. Tommy spoke about Nate's character and reliability. Jules confirmed the timeline of their relationship. Finally, Judge Morrison called for Ms. Chen's testimony. The social worker took the stand with professional composure. I conducted 3 separate home visits over a 3-week period at different times of day. In each visit, I found a household operating functionally with engaged parents and thriving children. Did you find any evidence of fraud or deception? I found evidence of a compressed timeline, yes, but not of deception. The children are genuinely bonded. The adults are genuinely cooperative. The home environment is genuinely stable. Ms. Chen paused. If this were a performance, it's the most convincing one I've seen in 23 years of doing this work. Derek's lawyer stood. But you also expressed concerns about long-term sustainability in your report, did you not? I expressed that time would be the ultimate proof of sustainability. But given the choice between a newly blended family that's functioning well and a previously absent father seeking custody primarily to prove a point, I know which environment serves the child's best interests. The lawyer sputtered, but Ms. Chen's testimony was damning in its honesty. Judge Morrison called for a recess, and they waited in the hallway for 90 minutes that felt like years. Kara paced, unable to sit still, while Nate stood by the window watching traffic move below. Finally, they were called back in. Judge Morrison looked at both parties with an expression that gave nothing away. I've reviewed all testimony and evidence. Mr. Lane, your concerns about the timeline are noted. However, this court must prioritize the child's welfare above all other considerations. Ms. Chen's report clearly indicates that Sophie is thriving in her current environment. Her school reports support this. Character testimony supports this. While the circumstances of Ms. Vaughn's marriage are unusual, unusual does not equal fraudulent. Derek started to object, but his lawyer placed a hand on his arm. However, Judge Morrison continued, I'm not satisfied that this arrangement has been tested sufficiently to determine long-term viability. Therefore, I'm ruling as follows. Custody remains with Ms. Vaughn under the current living arrangement. Mr. Lane, you will continue supervised visitation every other week. In 90 days, we will reconvene for a full custody review. At that time, I expect to see continued evidence of stability, school records, therapy records if necessary, and a report from Ms. Chen on the household's long-term functioning. She looked directly at Kara and Nate. This is not a game. If I find evidence that this marriage was entered fraudulently or that Sophie's welfare is being compromised, I will not hesitate to modify custody immediately. But for now, the current arrangement continues. The gavel fell. Kara felt her knees give out. Nate caught her, holding her steady as Derek's face turned purple with rage. His lawyer was already preparing appeals, but for now, for today, they'd won. Outside the courthouse, their small group celebrated with quiet relief. Rita hugged Kara hard enough to crack ribs while Tommy clapped Nate on the back. Jules took photos of them on the courthouse steps, not staged this time, just genuine relief and joy. 90 more days, Kara said to Nate as they drove toward Mrs. Chen's house. That's 3 months. Nate, that's enough time to prove this is real, he finished. Kara, we just bought ourselves 3 months to build something permanent. That's huge. Or 3 months for Derek to find new ways to tear us apart. Then we spend 3 months making ourselves untearable. Nate reached across the center console, taking her hand. We already did the impossible once. We can do it again. At Mrs. Chen's house, both girls came running, and Sophie launched herself into Kara's arms with enough force to knock them both backward. Did we win, Mama? Can we stay? We won, baby. We get to stay. Sophie wrapped her arms around Kara's neck and started crying, not sad tears, but the kind that came from relief so overwhelming it had nowhere else to go. Paisley joined the hug, then Nate, until all 4 of them were tangled together on Mrs. Chen's front lawn, crying and laughing in equal measure. That night, after the girls were asleep and the adrenaline finally crashed, Kara found Nate on the back porch again. She sat beside him without speaking, both of them looking at stars barely visible through light pollution. Thank you, she said finally, for everything. For standing up in court and fighting like she was your own daughter. She kind of is, at this point. They both are. Mine and yours and ours all at once. Nate was quiet for a moment. 90 days, Kara. That's long enough to stop pretending. What do you mean? I mean, the blanket barrier's been gone for 2 weeks. I mean, we hold hands without thinking about it. I mean, I come home excited to see you, not just relieved to have help with Paisley. I mean, this stopped being pretend somewhere around day 10, and we've been too scared to admit it. Kara's heart hammered. Nate, I'm not asking for anything to change tonight. I'm just saying we have 90 days to figure out if what we're building is something we want to keep building after the judge stops watching. And I already know my answer. Which is? He looked at her, his brown eyes steady and honest in the darkness. That I want to keep you, both of you. Not because a judge ordered it, or because it's convenient, or because we're pretending. Because somewhere between midnight in a diner and now, you became my family. And I don't want that to end when the performance does. Kara felt tears sting her eyes. The good kind. The kind that came from hope instead of fear. I want that too. I'm terrified of wanting it, but I do. Then let's be terrified together. We've already done the impossible. We might as well keep going and see how far it takes us. The next 90 days should have been easier. They'd won the first battle, bought themselves time, proven that what they'd built could withstand scrutiny. But Derek Lane wasn't the type of man who accepted defeat gracefully, and Kara learned quickly that wounded pride was more dangerous than initial opposition. The first strike came on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the court hearing. Kara was at the diner during the lunch rush when her phone rang, the school's number flashing on the screen. Her stomach dropped instantly. Ms. Vaughn? This is Principal Thornton. There's been an incident. Is Sophie okay? She's fine physically, but Mr. Lane showed up at the school during lunch recess claiming he had a right to see his daughter. When we explained that visitation was scheduled and supervised only, he became agitated. Campus security had to escort him off the property. Kara gripped the phone so hard her knuckles went white. Where's Sophie now? In my office with Mrs. Henderson. She's upset but safe. Mr. Lane never got close to her, but she saw the commotion from the playground. You might want to pick her up early today. Kara was already untying her apron. I'm on my way. She called Nate from the car. He answered with the sound of hammering in the background. Derek showed up at the school. He tried to take Sophie. The hammering stopped. I'm leaving the job site now. Meet you there? Yeah, Nate, what if he tries again? What if next time he succeeds? He won't. We're filing for a restraining order today. This ends now. At the school, Sophie sat in Principal Thornton's office clutching her elephant, her face blotchy from crying. The moment she saw Kara, she launched herself across the room. He was yelling, Mama. He said you were keeping me from him, and it wasn't fair, and he was my dad, and… Shh, baby. I've got you. He can't hurt you here. Principal Thornton looked grim. I've already filed an incident report. This kind of behavior violates our campus security policies. Mr. Lane is now banned from school property except for scheduled events where a restraining order wouldn't apply. And even then, only with advance notice and supervision. Nate arrived 15 minutes later, still in his work clothes, and the three of them took Sophie home. She was quiet in the back seat, processing, and when they got to the house, she went straight to her room and closed the door. Paisley, who'd come home on the bus to find the house empty, appeared in the kitchen doorway. "What happened? Is Sophie okay?" "She had a hard day at school," Nate said carefully. "She needs some space right now." "Because of her other dad? The one who comes to visitation?" Paisley's perceptiveness was sometimes startling. "He's mean, isn't he? Sophie never wants to go see him." Kara exchanged glances with Nate. They'd tried to keep the adult drama away from the girls, but kids noticed everything. "He's not mean exactly," Kara said. "He's just having trouble understanding what Sophie needs. She needs to be here, with us." Paisley said it with the absolute certainty of a 7-year-old who'd decided something was true. This is her home. We're her family. He should leave her alone. Out of the mouths of children came brutal honesty. Kara pulled Paisley into a hug. "You're a good sister. You know that?" "I know. Sophie told me yesterday. We're best friends and sisters, which is the best kind of sister to be." That evening, after the girls were asleep, Kara and Nate sat at the kitchen table with a lawyer they could barely afford. A woman named Sarah Mitchell, who specialized in family law and had a reputation for being fierce when children's welfare was at stake. "The school incident gives us grounds for a restraining order," Sarah said, reviewing their documentation. "Combined with the pattern of harassment, the anonymous police report, the attempts to discredit you both, the aggressive behavior at visitation, we can argue that Derek poses a threat to Sophie's emotional well-being and your family's stability." "Will it work?" Kara asked. "It should. Judge Morrison doesn't tolerate parents who use children as weapons. But Derek's lawyer will argue that he's a father trying to exercise his rights, that you're attempting to alienate Sophie from him." Sarah looked between them. "I need to know, is there anything in your relationship that won't hold up under intense scrutiny? Because Derek's going to dig. He's going to look for any crack he can exploit." Nate reached for Kara's hand under the table. "Our marriage started as a solution to a custody crisis, but it became real. We're not faking anything now. Can you prove that? We share finances. We share a bedroom. We've built a life together. Our kids think of each other as sisters. I don't know what other proof there is of a real marriage." Sarah studied them both with shrewd eyes. "The best proof is how you look at each other. The way you just reached for her hand without thinking. The way she leans toward you when she's stressed. Body language doesn't lie, and you two read as genuine." She closed her folder. "I'll file for the restraining order tomorrow. Expect Derek to retaliate. He's not going to take this quietly." She was right. Derek's retaliation came in the form of a 60-page filing 2 days later, requesting an emergency psychiatric evaluation for Kara on the grounds that her erratic behavior and questionable decision-making indicated mental instability. The filing cited living in her car, the hasty marriage, her resistance to Derek's reasonable requests for custody modification. Kara read the document in Sarah's office and felt something inside her crack. Every struggle she'd survived was being weaponized against her. The apartment loss painted as irresponsibility, the car living as neglect, the marriage as desperation bordering on delusion. "He's trying to make me look crazy," she whispered. "He's trying to paint a picture that serves his narrative," Sarah corrected. "But two can play that game. We'll request a psychological evaluation for Derek too. Full assessment, including how he interacts with Sophie, why he abandoned her for 18 months, why his primary motivation seems to be winning rather than parenting. Will that help? It'll level the playing field, and honestly, I think Derek will come out looking worse. His behavior shows someone who views Sophie as a possession, not a person. That won't play well with evaluators." The court ordered dual evaluations. Kara spent 3 sessions with Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a forensic psychologist who asked questions that cut to the bone. She talked about her marriage to Derek, the divorce, the struggles afterward. She talked about meeting Nate and the desperate bargain that became something real. She talked about her fears and hopes and the nightmares she still had about losing Sophie. Do you love Nate Dalton? Dr. Rodriguez asked during the final session. Kara had been expecting the question, but still wasn't prepared for it. Yes. When did you realize that? I don't know. It wasn't a moment. It was 100 small moments. The way he makes Sophie laugh. The way he leaves me coffee exactly how I like it. The way he doesn't keep score or make me feel like I owe him. The way he looks at all three of us, me and Sophie and Paisley, like we're the answer to a question he'd stopped asking. She paused. I think I started falling for him the night we met, when he offered help without judgment. But I didn't let myself acknowledge it until I realized I couldn't imagine my life without him anymore. Rodriguez made notes. And if the court ruled that you couldn't maintain custody unless you ended the marriage, what would you choose? Sophie. Always Sophie. She's my daughter. But it would destroy me because Nate and Paisley have become just as essential. They're not secondary to Sophie. They're part of the same answer. This family we've built, it's not hierarchy. It's all of us together or none of us works. Derek's evaluation didn't go as smoothly. The psychologist assigned to him, Dr. Marcus Webb, spent 2 sessions before requesting a third because Derek's responses were inconsistent with observed behavior. In the sessions, Derek presented as a concerned father fighting for his daughter. In the supervised visitation that Dr. Webb observed, Derek spent more time on his phone than engaging with Sophie, forgot her age when asked, and incorrectly identified her favorite color, animal, and subject in school. He's performing fatherhood, Doctor, Webb noted in his report, which Sarah gleefully shared with Kara and Nate. The concern appears to be less about the child's welfare and more about winning a conflict with the mother. His interaction with Sophie is stilted and transactional, lacking the natural warmth typically present in healthy parent-child relationships. The restraining order was granted with modifications. Derek couldn't come within 500 feet of Kara and Nate's home or Sophie's school except for court-ordered supervised visitation. The psychological evaluations were submitted to Judge Morrison, and they waited. Meanwhile, life continued. Sophie turned 7 in March, and they threw a party in the backyard with Emma and Madison, and half of Mrs. Henderson's class running around playing games while Kara and Nate manned the grill and cake table. Watching Sophie blow out candles surrounded by friends, her face glowing with uncomplicated joy, Kara felt something settle in her chest. Proof that they'd given her daughter something Derek's money never could. That night, after the guests left and the girls crashed early from sugar and excitement, Kara and Nate cleaned up together in comfortable silence. It was the kind of domestic routine that married couples did without thinking, but Kara was hyper-aware of every moment. The way Nate hummed while loading the dishwasher, the way their hands brushed when passing plates, the way he smiled at her over the chaos of wrapping paper and deflated balloons. That was a good day, he said. That was a perfect day. She's happy, Kara. Really, genuinely happy. You did that. We did that. Kara leaned against the counter. Nate, I need to tell you something. His expression shifted to concerned. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right, and that terrifies me. She took a breath. I told Dr. Rodriguez that I love you during the evaluation. She asked point blank, and I said yes without even thinking about it. Nate set down the dish towel very carefully. You love me? I do. I know that's complicated and probably not what you signed up for when you offered to help a stranger in a diner, but it's true. Somewhere between pretending to be married and actually being married, I fell in love with you. She forced herself to meet his eyes. You don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Nate crossed the kitchen in 3 strides and kissed her. It was the first real kiss they'd shared. Not for show, not for social workers or judges, just for them. His hands cupped her face gently, and Kara felt tears slip down her cheeks because this was what she'd been too afraid to want, too broken to believe she deserved. When they finally pulled apart, Nate rested his forehead against hers. I love you too. Have for weeks, maybe longer. I just didn't know how to say it without sounding like I was taking advantage of the situation. This situation is the only reason we found each other. Best disaster of my life, then. They stood in the kitchen holding each other while the clock ticked toward midnight, and upstairs their daughters slept peacefully, and Kara thought maybe fairy tales didn't always start with once upon a time. Sometimes they started with midnight in a diner and a desperate bargain, and two broken people deciding to be less broken together. April brought the 90-day review hearing. This time, Kara walked into the courthouse with her head high, Nate's hand solid in hers, and a 3-inch binder of documentation that told the story of 3 months lived authentically. Judge Morrison reviewed everything: school reports showing Sophie's continued improvement, therapy notes from the counselor principal Thornton had recommended, who documented Sophie's healthy adjustment, Dr. Rodriguez's evaluation concluding that Kara was mentally stable and the marriage was genuine, Dr. Webb's evaluation suggesting Derek's motivations were suspect, statements from teachers and neighbors, and Rita and Tommy. Derek's lawyer tried to fight, but the evidence was overwhelming. Sophie was thriving. The household was stable. The marriage, regardless of its origins, had evolved into something legitimate and healthy for all parties involved. Ms. Vaughn, Judge Morrison said, "When you first appeared before this court, I was skeptical of your circumstances. The timeline was concerning, the arrangement unconventional, but I gave you 30 days to prove yourselves, and you've exceeded that mandate significantly." Kara held her breath. The evidence clearly shows that Sophie is happy, healthy, and benefiting from her current living situation. Lane, while I don't question your desire to be involved in your daughter's life, the evidence also shows that your approach has been more adversarial than parental. The psychological evaluation suggests your primary concern is winning rather than Sophie's actual welfare. Derek's face turned red, but his lawyer kept him seated. Therefore, I'm ruling as follows. Primary custody remains with Ms. Vaughn under the current household arrangement. Mr. Lane, your visitation will continue to be supervised, but we're reducing it to once per month unless and until you complete a parenting course and demonstrate improved ability to meet Sophie's emotional needs. She looked at Kara and Nate. This court recognizes that your family structure is unconventional. It's also clear that it works. Custody will be reviewed annually rather than quarterly, barring any significant changes in circumstances. The gavel fell, and this time it felt final, permanent, real. Outside the courthouse, Kara couldn't stop shaking. They'd won. Not just this hearing, but the war. Sophie was theirs, hers and Nate's, and the family they'd built from desperation and hope and stubborn determination. Derek left without speaking to them, Melissa in tow, his lawyer already on the phone, presumably planning appeals that everyone knew wouldn't succeed. The psychological evaluations had destroyed his credibility, and even his money couldn't buy a different truth. "It's over," Kara whispered. "It's really over." "No," Nate corrected, pulling her close. "It's just beginning." That weekend they told the girls the full truth, age-appropriate version, but honest. They sat them down in the living room and explained that Mama and Nate had gotten married very quickly to help keep their family together, but that it had become real because they loved each other and they loved both girls. "So you're married for real now?" Paisley asked. "Not pretend?" "For real," Nate confirmed. "Forever real, if Kara will have me." Sophie looked between them with serious eyes. "Does this mean you're my dad now? Not Derek dad, but real dad?" Nate glanced at Kara, who nodded through tears. "If you want me to be." "I want you to be. You do dad things. You make breakfast and help with homework and come to school stuff. And you know that I like elephants and hate bears and my favorite color is purple." Sophie paused. "Derek dad doesn't know any of that. He's just my dad because biology happened. You're my dad because you chose me." Kara pulled Sophie into her lap, overcome. This child who'd survived so much, who'd adapted and adjusted and remained kind through everything, she deserved all the stability they could give her. "Can I call you Mom?" Paisley asked Kara suddenly. "I have a mom somewhere, but she doesn't act like one. You act like one." "Oh, sweetheart." Kara opened her other arm, and Paisley tucked herself against Kara's side. "I would be honored if you called me Mom." So that's what they became. Not a blended family or a reconstructed family. Just a family. Nate started the legal process to adopt Sophie, while Kara began the same process for Paisley. It would take months, maybe years, but the intention was there. The commitment was real. Summer came with long evenings in the backyard, the girls catching fireflies while Kara and Nate sat on the porch steps talking about everything and nothing. They enrolled both girls in day camp, took a week's vacation to a lake 3 hours away where they rented a cabin and taught the girls to fish and made s'mores and slept in one big room because separating felt wrong now. In August, Nate surprised Kara with a small velvet box at dinner. Inside was a simple silver band with 3 small stones, Sophie's birthstone, Paisley's birthstone, and a diamond in the center. "I know we're already married," he said as the girls watched with barely contained excitement. "But we did it backwards. Paperwork first, commitment later. I wanted to ask properly. Kara Vaughn, will you marry me? Again, for real, with our daughters as witnesses and no judge or social worker in sight. Will you build this life with me, not because we have to, but because we want to?" Kara was crying and laughing and saying yes before he finished the question. The ring slid onto her finger, a perfect fit, like everything else about this impossible, wonderful family. They renewed their vows in October in the backyard under string lights with Rita and Tommy and Jules and Mrs. Chen and Principal Thornton and all the people who'd stood by them through the fight. Sophie and Paisley were co-maids of honor in matching purple dresses, both glowing with pride at their role in the ceremony. This time, when Nate kissed his bride, there was no performance. Just 2 people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their separate disasters and built something unbreakable. Derek sent a gift, a savings bond for Sophie's college fund, with a card that said simply, "I'm sorry I wasn't what you needed. I hope he is." It wasn't enough, would never be enough to make up for the damage he'd caused. But it was acknowledgement, and maybe the beginning of him becoming the kind of father Sophie could eventually have a relationship with on her own terms. Or maybe not. Either way, Sophie was safe. She had a mother who'd fought for her, fought for her. A father who'd chosen her. A sister who loved her. And a home that would never be taken away. December brought the first real snow of the season, and they bundled up the girls to build a snowman in the front yard. Neighbors waved, familiar now with the family at the yellow house on Maple Street. The family that appeared suddenly and became permanent, that proved love could be deliberate and chosen and just as valid as the accidental kind. That night, with hot chocolate warming their hands and both girls asleep upstairs exhausted from snowplay, Kara and Nate sat together on the couch. The house was quiet except for the heating system's gentle hum and the occasional car passing outside. "Do you ever think about that night in the diner?" Kara asked. "About how completely insane this all was?" "Every day. And every day I'm grateful I overheard your prayer for a miracle and was arrogant enough to think I could be one." "You were, though. You are. Not because you saved me, although you did, but because you saw me at my absolute worst and decided I was worth fighting for." She leaned into his shoulder. "I was drowning, Nate, completely underwater. And you threw me a lifeline that turned into an anchor that turned into home. You saved yourself. I just gave you space to do it. We saved each other. That's the truth no one prepared me for. That sometimes the person who rescues you is also the person you rescue right back." Nate wrapped his arm around her, pulling her closer. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the neighborhood in pristine white. Inside, their family slept safely, loved fiercely, and completely secure in the knowledge that they belonged to each other. A year ago, Kara had been a desperate woman in a diner whispering prayers into her hands. Today, she was a wife, a mother to 2 daughters, part of a family that existed because 2 strangers made an impossible choice and refused to let it fail. The house on Maple Street held a family built on courage, disguised as desperation, on love that grew in the spaces between performance and reality, on the radical idea that chosen family was just as valid as blood. It held laughter and arguments and homework battles and Sunday pancakes and bedtime stories and all the beautiful mundane details of a life lived deliberately. Sophie would grow up knowing that her mother fought heaven and earth to keep her safe. Paisley would grow up knowing that family wasn't about biology, but about who showed up every single day. And both girls would learn that sometimes miracles wore flannel shirts and offered coffee in diners at midnight. And sometimes you built your own fairy tale one impossible day at a time. Kara kissed Nate softly, tasting chocolate and hope and the future they'd fought so hard to claim. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything, for being my midnight miracle. Thank you for being brave enough to say yes." Above them, floorboards creaked, one of the girls using the bathroom, checking that everyone was still home, still safe. A moment later, small footsteps padded back to bed. The house settled again into peaceful quiet. This was what they'd fought for. Not perfection, not ease, but this, the ordinary, extraordinary gift of being together, being safe, being loved without condition or performance. Kara closed her eyes and let herself feel the full weight of it. The man beside her who'd become her partner in every sense. The children sleeping upstairs who called them both mom and dad. The home that finally felt permanent. The future that stretched ahead not as a threat, but as a promise. She'd walked into that diner a broken woman with nothing but desperation and a daughter to protect. She'd walked out with the beginning of something impossible. And impossible, she'd learned, was just another word for not yet true. Their family was proof that sometimes the best things in life started with the worst moments, that sometimes strangers became soulmates, that sometimes love chose you when you were too busy surviving to choose it back. The snow continued falling outside, covering everything in fresh possibility. Inside the yellow house on Maple Street, a family slept, built on choice, sustained by commitment, made permanent by love that refused every reasonable boundary. And in the morning, they'd wake up and do it all again. Because that's what families did. They showed up, they fought, they loved fiercely and forgave quickly and built something that could withstand any storm. Kara Dalton, she'd taken his name officially in the vow renewal, had finally found what she'd been searching for in that diner. Not just safety or stability, but home. The kind you built rather than found. The kind that built you right back. And it was worth every impossible moment that got them there.